trial team. And I know several members are in the audience. So before they come up, I'll just do a little introduction about what mock trial is, and then we'll invite them all forward. The mock trial competition is sponsored by the Massachusetts Bar Association. The competition places high school teams from across the state in simulated courtroom situations where they assume the roles of lawyers, defendants, and witnesses in hypothetical cases before sitting judges in district courthouses whenever possible. This year, more than 1,500 students from 132 high schools participated in mock trial. The team is responsible to argue both the defendant and the prosecution side during different competitions. The Carver High School mock trial team went 3-0 during the regular season to win the regional competition and advance to the state quarterfinals for the second straight year. The advisor for the team is Jackie Perkins. Unfortunately, Jackie is homesick today and is unable to attend this evening. But we'd like to invite the team forward. And I know that I believe Mrs. Perkins has identified Natalie Mosier to tell us a little bit about the team and mock trial and what happened this year. So we invite the entire team forward if you could at this time. That would be great. And then we'll do an individual recognition of everybody at the end. Yeah, Ryan, why don't you guys just go behind Natalie for now, and then we'll bring everybody up forward and we'll do an individual recognition.
All right, so mock trial, like Mr. Neef said, is sponsored by the Mass Bar Association, and every year it's our responsibility to prepare both the defense and prosecution sides of a case. This year our case was about a soldier who had PTSD and claimed that because of his PTSD he committed a murder. The prosecution claimed the PTSD was fabricated, and so the question of dispute was whether or not he had PTSD in this context. This is what we were arguing. We usually get districted in the Cape region, so we're going up against a lot of schools like Barnstable, Cape Cod Academy, Sturgis, and this year we were able to make it into the regionals. So we have 3 regular season games. The winner of the most of those for your region goes on to the next level. And that was our best game. Even though we did lose, the other team got a perfect score, but sometimes that's how it works out.
That perfect score doesn't happen very often.
No, it does not. So yeah, that's pretty much it with mock trial. And it's always been a really closely knit team. It's meant a lot to me through my time in high school. I'm a senior this year, and I'm really going to miss mock trial, especially the way it's able to bring together people from all 4 classes and people from different other clubs. Pretty much everyone in mock trial belongs to at least one other club, which is why we meet from 7 to 9 at night to accommodate everyone's different schedules. And that's always been really nice to get to know other people who might not be in drama or band with me. And also just mock trial also brings together a lot of people from different academic backgrounds, and we all have this common interest for advocacy and argument and the law.
And Natalie, a very nice job. Thank you. It's I did not attend a mock trial competition this year, but I have in the past, and it's intense in terms of the reality of it, in terms of doing it within the courtroom. And did you have judges this year, or did you have magistrates? Do you know?
Most of the years we have a registered Mass Bar lawyer pretending to be a judge. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty intimidating sometimes when they know their stuff. They wouldn't be selected if they didn't. So it's always a challenge, but it's a good time.
And I also think it's great that you mentioned that this is a 9 through 12 team.
Yes.
And how many years have you done? You've done it all 4 years.
I've done it all 4 years of high school. Yeah. This year also, part of what was so I think remarkable about how well we did was that our team was mostly new freshmen and sophomores who hadn't done it before, and they just really rose to the occasion, and they were really awesome.
What was the easier case to be the prosecution or to be the defendant?
Defense, definitely.
Everybody agree? Yeah. Ryan's like, baby. So, no, I think it's a very difficult competition. It's a lot of preparation that goes into doing the mock trials, and the team has been very successful. And we wanted to recognize them for going on to the regional competition, and as you said, losing to a team who had a perfect score. Do you know how they did going forward by any chance?
I'm not sure. We always go to see the finals just so we can learn from the best of the best, and they were not one of those 2 teams this year. I'm not sure how they did going forward though. Do you guys know what round they got out in?
I do not.
No.
We were in the 4th tier, And that's where they beat us. And then obviously they won it the last year, so they must have been knocked out in the second or third round of the tournament.
Yeah, so 32 teams go in. That's when we got out. Then there's 16,
Right.
8, 4, 2.
So but it goes down from 132 to 32. So they made the 32, which is great. So, otherwise, we'd just like to recognize each of the members individually. So, as I call your name, if you can come forward and receive a certificate and shake everybody's hand, that'd be great. Natalie, you just happened to be on the top. Wasn't planned that way. Natalie Moja.
Well done.
Ryan Semple.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Nice job. Congratulations.
Well done.
Caitlin Weston.
Congratulations. Thanks for supporting us and making us look good.
We are missing a few people, but I'll read everybody's name. Darren Foster. Dorian Rodriguez. Nathan Miller. Dalton Souza.
Well done.
Mary Lanigan. Evan Pierce. Kevin Schott.
Well done.
Christopher Schoen. Cam Tate. Emily Orzechowski. Lauren Steed.
Congratulations.
Daniel Shannon. And Haley Young. So again, I'd just like to thank and recognize the members of our mock trial team for an outstanding season. To our seniors, good luck. To our returning 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, I know you're going to go forward and do proud for the mock trial team. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Oh, Ryan, you want to say?
Yeah, I just like to say a few
Go ahead, Ryan. You can say a few words. Absolutely. Ryan is a graduating senior this year.
Yeah, I figured this would be my last time to speak as a member of the team, so I might as well just take my chance. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my dress. I've never been to a selections meeting before, so I just thought, well, it's not a trial, so
Right, you're fine, Ryan.
yeah, it's really only a suit in this. So Natalie, she just had to leave because she had to babysit. But she could attest to the truth for that. You know, I suppose now would be a good time to remember your advice, Coach. So I have to say, I've done mock trial for my entire high school career, and it is by far my favorite thing I've done in high school. Sorry, Coach. It is not only is the intensity of the trials we partake in unmatched by almost anything I've ever seen. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen some court dramas at some point, and I think you can tell just by watching those that they're really intense because oftentimes people's lives are on the line. And although we obviously aren't dealing with lives on the line because it's a mock trial, not a real trial, I think my team would agree with me in saying that it doesn't feel that way. The sheer amount of mental intensity it requires really makes it something challenging, and I think a very rewarding experience. Not only in terms of the types of things we do, like giving openings and closings and direct examinations and cross-examinations in front of actual sitting judges, but also the things we learn in mock trial. And I have to give a special shout out to Mrs. Perkins for kind of helping this along, because I think, again, my team would agree with me in saying that she really does her best to not only make sure that we get the most out of our experience there in terms of our personal enjoyment, but also makes it a focus to improve a lot of skills that we don't really get to focus on in school. I know recently the school's been pushing more towards practicing presentation skills, but in mock trial, it's just on a completely different level. I can attest personally, when I was a freshman, when I joined mock trial, I could barely speak without stuttering. And so, but even then, I opened my first trial with the opening statement. And a lot of that was because of Mrs. Perkins, kind of pushing me and just, correcting all these things I made. But between that and the just the type of pressure that comes with just sitting in the courtroom and doing these things, I think it not only pushes us to achieve this thrilling feeling, but also to make us better presenters and better students, and I think in the long run, better people. I think that's the gist of what I wanted to say, but I also would like to just comment upon how fun this whole thing is. I mentioned it was my favorite thing to do in high school, and the meetings, I think the meetings would scare a lot of people away, being 7 to 9 twice a week. A lot of people have better things to do at that time, especially mock trial members. And we still are managed to get everyone who's here, and obviously everyone who's not here, to come at these hours, because they're dedicated, but also because of how enjoyable an experience it is. I know that we've had our fair share of enjoyable moments, like I'm sure you guys remember Darren's Cross. I'm not going to go into detail about what that was, but just there's some of the most memorable experiences I've had are there, and I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Yeah, it's been an honor to be part of the team for the past 4 years, and I'm sad I have to leave. So
Thank you for your comments.
get that out.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else? No, you got it. All right. Thank you. Ryan and Natalie covered it for you. All right. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is comments from the general public. Okay, how about comments from the EAPC?
Tom Pinto, EAPC President. I'd like to start tonight by thanking Scott for your open working relationship throughout this process and being responsive to phone calls and meetings. I want to address a comment made by the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen during the Joint School Committee Board of Selectmen meeting. A reference by the Chairman referred to the elephant in the room, that the teachers would not sit down to talk. That comment was untruthful, because the EAPC has met on several occasions with the superintendent, in addition has met with the town manager to discuss proposed teacher layoffs. In fact, we even attended today's meeting at the State House. Unfortunately, that comment appears to stem from the fact that the EAPC will not discuss opening the contract. I can only conclude that when the chairman refers to sitting down to talk, that only one option could be discussed. When there is only one option that is acceptable and only one option that can be discussed, we usually refer to that tactic as bullying in order to achieve consensus. In a recent email, the town manager inquired if in 2010, teachers' concessions, when the teachers did open the contract and gave up 2 days of pay and 45 days of wage freeze, were being considered deep concession by the EAPC. In 2010, 2 days of pay for the average teacher was over $700, amounting to giving up just under $100,000 total. Teachers are parents, caretakers, and members of the community. That concession may or may not seem like a lot to our town manager, who, according to public documents, currently earns $125,610 plus a car allowance and has a projected increase in pay of $5,729 for next year. But for most of us, it's a mortgage payment, a car loan, a tax bill, food for the month. My opinion is that teachers did make a deep concession in 2010. According to Massachusetts District Profile, current Carver teachers' salaries have decreased last year by $516,046 due to multiple reasons. Educators are lifelong learners and must acquire advanced degrees, continual coursework in order to maintain their state license. This education continues to be costly. Lastly, I was informed by the town manager that the Board of Selectmen have not received any mail from the public about the issue of layoffs. But I have record of at least 185 emails being received. Hopefully, the Board of Selectmen will share these emails with the town manager. As we head to town meeting, I hope that the community of Carver comes out and supports education. Thank you.
Thank you. Update by Student Advisory Council? You want to go right into the approval of minutes?
Yes. So obviously, I'm not sure what happened with our Student Advisory Council, but obviously not present this evening, so we'll go right into approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes from March 13th, 2007.
Second. Oh, second, Andrew.
Excuse me.
Motion and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Thank you.
Communications?
Communications, Reed's Collaborative. It is required that the school committee annually appoint a representative to the board of directors of the Reed's Collaborative. We received the communication from Reed's requesting that we appoint someone for the next school year. This position has historically been filled by the superintendent, so I would be glad to continue on the Reed's board and would entertain a motion to that extent.
I'd make a motion to maintain Scott as the representative on the Reed's Collaborative Board.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and second, any questions?
I think we've just enacted a new collaboration with them, so
Yeah.
even more important
Yeah.
now than in the past.
Yeah, I've enjoyed serving on the board in my year in the superintendency. We meet on a monthly basis and review all the programs and options available through Reed's Collaborative.
Motion and second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, is this me,
Yes.
Anne Marie
Yes, it
Phyllis?
is.
Yes, ma'am.
Just you sign the bottom, Sharon.
Yes, ma'am. Reports from the superintendent.
Okay, first one is we invite Ms. Cargill to talk a little about some sample MCAS questions. During our March meeting, the committee requested a presentation on the look of the next generation MCAS exam. Meredith's going to review some sample questions and kind of take us through the exam. So, Meredith.
Thank you. Anne Marie, did you pass out the buzzers to everybody? All right. So I appreciate you asking for this. I've decided to select a couple different questions to show you, but first to remind our audience at home that the legacy MCAS is now sunsetted for grades 3 through 8, and the next generation MCAS is well underway. We assessed our third graders last week in English Language Arts, and tomorrow morning we'll be doing fourth grade and eighth grade at the middle high school. So this again is a measurement of how well students have attained the frameworks in English language arts and math, and it allows us to leverage some digital advantages because we did do the PARC test the past 2 years. So this year we're using a mixed environment between Chromebooks and iPads in order to provide the assessment and administer that on both campuses. And then it's also designed on the architecture of current assessment theory with the idea that these assistive technologies can help the student taking the test who might need some additional testing accommodations. And lastly, that this test looks and feels different from the traditional MCAS because it aims not only to assess content, but the skills necessary in terms of applying that content. So with English language arts, I'll give you an example. We'll start with 3rd grade. And I'll show you, but typically what happens is a student will log in, will start the test, and there will be a reading passage that the child reads. And then there will be the opportunity to write about that passage. Another common piece that students will see in grades 3 through 8 is the opportunity to look at paired texts. And in that situation, they have 2 different reading samples that were selected, and they read through both of them. And then the questions or the different prompts that they are given have to do with how well they're able to respond to both of those texts and compare and contrast them based on things like author's purpose, voice, and plot. So I'll give you an example for 3rd grade. When students go in, they have a situation where they log into their Chromebook or they log into their iPad, and the screen will look like this. And here they'll enter in their name and then their passcode, which allows their answers to be identified to the student that is taking it. Just so you know, a question that sometimes comes up when we do this presentation is parents will say, if you're doing this online, doesn't that mean that a student can go and look up the answer in Safari or Firefox or Google? And what actually happens in both the Chromebook and the iPad environment is there's something called a kiosk mode, which means once a student enters their unique identifier, so their password and their information, it locks them into that program, and the only way to get out is to complete the test. Kind of like jail. No, I'm just teasing. So we're going to start the test now. Again, this is a 3rd grade question or a 3rd grade English language arts example. And so as you can see, the student can go through and scroll down as they read. And I'm going to scroll towards the end so you can see about how long it is. So this particular story is 38 lines, and they number those lines to help the student be able to identify places in the text where they may have read something. Some interactive features of the test is a student can highlight information. So if they want to highlight the area that says, "Great idea, Dad said," they can choose to highlight that in blue or in pink. When they click off of it, it's still highlighted. There's also a notepad. So if they want to take notes, they can say, Dad is quoted, or they can continue to keep track as they go along. When they open that the notepad back up, their notes are still there. So when it comes time to move through questions, if they want to reference text that they've read, they can kind of go back and forth or oscillate back and forth between their notes and what is that they want to read. And then they can go through and select different questions. So if they're reading and they get stuck and they want to bump ahead and look at what the question might look like before they continue reading, they're welcome to do so. So after they read, they advance on. Here there are some multiple choice questions. If they're using, if they're trying to eliminate certain questions or certain possible answers because they're not quite sure, they can go through and they can click on these groovy little things, and that will allow them kind of a visual opportunity to see what they have automatically ruled out. So the text is still there, the same text that they read those 38 lines beforehand, but this time it's on the left-hand side. and over here they're able to answer these questions. So I know that the text is small, but for those of you at home, one of the questions, the first one says, throughout the first half of the story, Dad can best be described as feeling A, brave, B, amused, C, peaceful, or D, determined. So obviously this is going to require the third grade reader to be able to read the first half of the story and then have an idea of what those vocabulary words mean in context. So again, the content piece of that is knowing the vocabulary words. The skill piece is being able to apply them in context. So that's an example of this type of question. If we keep going on, there is an interactive piece. Let me go back to that last question, where students take these different responses that Dad has, and they can drag these pieces down and be able to select the one that they feel best represents this event over here. So it's a little more engaging for students because they can go through and scroll down. Let's see if I can do it. And then be able to answer things accordingly. So they try to make it a little more enticing as opposed to just filling in the bubbles mark, or the little marks, nice and dark. And then here it asks them to respond to this prompt. It says, the story tells about Derek's first camping trip. Write Derek's journal entry about this camping trip. Include information about how the characters responded to the events in the story as you write the journal entry. So it's asking the reader here to be able to not only read and comprehend the passage, but then to be able to process that and write about it. And then we'll go through a couple more in the third grade, and then we'll bump up to middle school. So here is an article on penguins. This is informational text or nonfiction text. And then there is a poem about penguins. And they ask some questions about that. And then as they go on, this would be the paired text feature. So students have the ability to bump back and forth between these two texts, if you see what my cursor is doing over here. And the questions that they ask, they're able to go back and reference that text. Some people say, sorry. That's all right. It added some excitement to the presentation. Thank you.
That was your buzzer.
Yeah. So some people say if students are reading two different texts, why should they be allowed to go back and access that? And again, this is less of a gotcha and much more of a really trying to assess the skill involved in really taking two pairs of texts and being able to do something with them in terms of skill. So this particular practice test has 11 different questions. You're welcome to access it from my presentation, which everyone has a digital copy of, but I wanted to show you that piece. So I am going to go back and show you what a 7th grade English language arts test would look like so you can see in comparison. And I'm not going to go through every little piece of it, but I'll give you a chance to look at it, and then we'll get on to math. So here again, it's 8 questions, and it explains that they're going to read a passage. They go through. This time, it's fewer individual lines, but more text that they need to read. So they go through, it's 33 instead of 38. And then they go on and, again, answer a few questions, and then they write about what it is that they read. And then we go to paired text. This time it's an article called Blizzard, and again, comparing it with a poem. And they go through and answer questions and then have to be able to compare and contrast in context. So one of the pieces from a test administrator standpoint, meaning our teachers that actually are in the trenches and do the heavy lifting in terms of giving out the Chromebooks, making sure everyone logs in appropriately, making sure that they're administering the test according to all the guidelines that the state requires. One of the pieces that we talk about oftentimes is how do we build testing stamina in kiddos? So I don't know if any of you fell prey to this, but when we were kids and we took the tests that were on booklets tablets and there was that little stop sign, it became very enticing to make little pictures or to draw the Christmas tree as opposed to read through every single question. And not for everybody, but for some folks. And so one of the things that we try to do is give students a lot of opportunities via Google Drive and some of the other kind of word processing and writing opportunities we have, and through our benchmark writing prompts, to be able to have the opportunity to look at paired text, to practice writing, and then to seek kind of critical feedback from their peers or from their teachers around how to either augment it, add more, how to develop themselves as writers so that when they get to this part in the year, they don't just write 1 or 2 sentences and move on. So, all right. And then we're going to move to math, and we'll do a 4th grade snippet for math.
Meredith, on that last piece,
Yeah.
do you find that there is less occurrence of the kids just writing 1 or 2 sentences? Are they actually doing what that practice is hoping they do?
I do think that over time we see that, but I also think that there is a piece that some kiddos like to move through pretty quickly. And it's not everybody, but I do think that sometimes, when we administer this test, we can't do a lot of redirection, so we can't say, oh, you did a very nice job on those 3 sentences, now you have to go back and add more. You don't have that same level of interaction. So we're very grateful that teachers are so thoughtful in terms of developing writers who are kind of conscientious of that prior to. And I think part of it is now that we're giving students opportunities to do that on Google Drive so that it's not a foreign medium for them. They've had that digital experience, it works out better. So here's a grade for math example, and I'm just going to pick 1 or 2 4th grade questions and 1 or 2 8th grade questions so you can compare and contrast. So in 4th grade, this is an assessment involving fractions. So it says Jacob wrote the expression shown, 6/10 plus 7/100. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression Jacob wrote? So again, here they're asking students to be able to figure out the similarity between these two and then come up with the correct answer from what's listed.
Well, but the biggest difference between that and a normal test that you would be used to is that there's more than one correct answer there. They're picking like A and C, or whichever one of them are equivalent is what they have to choose. So it can be more than one,
Thank you.
which is a difference.
It is a difference, and I think that, again, is something that we've had to, and will continue to have to kind of train our learners around, because oftentimes we're conditioned, not just our learners, but we in general, that there's one answer and then you move on. So thank you for pointing that out. Additionally, I wanted to point out that there are multi-step questions, and that's something new. So if a student doesn't answer the first part correct, it could, to some degree, impact the second part of the question. So I'm going to move to a different question. So this is called an equation editor, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like. So it says Ryan makes 6 backpacks. He uses 3/4 of a yard of cloth to make each backpack. What is the total amount of cloth in yards that Ryan uses to make all 6 backpacks? Enter your answer in the space provided. Enter only your answer. So they're not looking for the algorithm, they're just looking for the answer. And on here you can do a mixed number and type that in. So you could do 6 and 5/8, which is obviously incorrect, but you could show that. You can do just a regular fraction. You can choose parentheses, and this gets more sophisticated as students move up the grade level, but there is an opportunity for students to develop their own equations. And then I'm going to show you 2 8th grade examples.
Meredith, is it time consuming for the children to enter? Or are they that computer savvy?
I
Not like when I was in the 3rd grade, I was still chewing crayons, but I mean, I certainly wasn't doing data entry.
Nope, I'm right there with you. So
Even crayons in the 2nd grade.
crayons are good for every grade level. So I would say that those are some inherent challenges with taking them online. I do think that our students, they're digital natives. They're much more savvy in terms of being able to navigate different games and bounce in and out. And I would say that they're much more savvy if they've texted. So as you move up the grade levels, if they text a lot, they understand the QWERTY keyboard and the placement on there. It doesn't necessarily mean that they type the way that we were taught to type. Sometimes they work really quickly with one or two fingers, and it's like hunt and peck, but very quickly. So, because they know where everything is and they've kind of been able to adapt. In other cases, they're able to do correct key placement. Whoops. We do integrate typing into our IMC curriculum. So I know that that's part of what Mrs. Kent does at the elementary level. But the reality is she sees them once every 8 days. And so it's not anything that is a skill that, you know, they've necessarily been able to grasp without practice. So, yep. So in this case, this gives an example of having to graph a line, and students are given information. So the number of bottles a machine fills is proportional to the number of minutes the machine operates. The machine fills 250 bottles every 20 minutes. Create a graph that shows the number of bottles Y the machine fills in X minutes. So here, obviously, they have to have knowledge of coordinate plane. They need to understand unit rate or slope and be able to graph that accordingly. So that's an example of an 8th grade question, and then I'll give you another example. So in this case, they're asking us to identify an outlier in the data. So students need to be able to read data. They need to understand vocabulary that's involved. So the words that come out that students would need to have knowledge of in context is scatter plot, outlier, ordered pair, and they would have to understand the difference between Y and X axes and be able to grasp that accordingly and enter it into an equation editor. So you are welcome in my presentation to click on this and play around at your leisure. This is available for all public. If they want to be able to see the practice tests, they're available online. A lot of our students have been doing this in their class. They've been looking at it. And so those pieces are important. So I think I covered most of the rest of my presentation, just the fact that we assess writing, we assess both fiction and nonfiction or informational text, that math really is looking at kind of the key domains in the new frameworks, and then more importantly would be what do we do with that content, so the skill set in the math practices. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry it was less Jeopardy-like.
Thank you.
No questions, Meredith? All right, so Meredith's on for our next presentation as well. So just give me an update on our technology vision. Last March, we approved a technology plan as a district. This presentation will provide an update on where we are and what steps we've taken towards achieving the parts of that plan and what's our future direction.
Thank you. I'm going to let that load for a second. Well, there we go. So this is just to give you kind of an annual update on where we are. If you remember, our technology vision is a document that you approved tonight. I want to do a really quick historical overview, let you know our progress to date, and then what our next steps are. So if you remember, about 1.5 to 2 years ago, we started to look at where Carver was in terms of its tech environment and coupled that with a couple key factors that we knew were going to kind of shift the landscape of instruction and teaching and learning. One of those things is obviously online assessment, which we just talked about with the blue arrows here, but the other pieces were really preparing our students for a world that doesn't exist yet. So we understand that they're going to have to solve problems that aren't problems yet. And we want to make sure that they have the opportunity and the skill set to do that. And then also the jobs outlook piece. So I think everyone has heard that every year there's 1 million STEM-related jobs, so science, technology, engineering, and math jobs that go unfilled in our country, and they need to be filled by American citizens. Oftentimes, their DoD jobs or Department of Defense jobs require a high level of security and integrity, and most importantly, a high level of math, science, critical thinking. And so it's a call to arms, not only for K through 12 education, but higher education as well. So knowing those things, we had two kind of subcommittees working together to form one larger committee, which included 27 folks between the elementary school and the middle high school. We asked teachers to participate who were passionate about the topic or had some questions involving tech education. We began with our administrative leadership team having a norming session in the summer of 2015, and that led to this plan being created in 2016 with teacher input. The school committee adopted it last year. It includes a 3-year technology capital budget and includes action steps with embedded target dates. The two technology committees continue to exist separately because the work that they have to do is pretty unique to each campus. Each building has met. The middle high school continues to meet either every other week or once a month, depending on the need and the time of year. And the elementary school at this point meets either once a month or once every other month to start to prepare for the new elementary school. And the point of this is not only to discuss kind of the mechanical deployment of technology integration, but really more importantly, how it is infused in the teaching and learning and kind of everyday work that we do in classrooms. The idea is that these committees serve as a conduit between whoever they're representing, whether it's a department, whether it's a grade level, whether it's administration, and that they're able to bring things back to department meetings, to grade level PLCs, and be able to discuss questions, seek input or feedback from teachers, and then they bring that back to the committee. So this past year at the middle high school, we were able to purchase Chromebooks, research and create a preparation plan for this first phase of one-to-one deployment. Administration at the building level chose to administer these to or hand them out to grades 7, 8, and 9. So we needed to develop a deployment plan. We researched insurance options and a parent portal for purchasing insurance policies, and then decided to see how all of that went. And we've continued to follow that. Candy, Barry, and Brian Mahoney have been integral in terms of helping support Chromebooks if any of them have a hard time connecting, or if there's been an issue involving a few of the keys. They've definitely looked at that. We also appreciate other members of the technology committee. They're an amazing group. They step up and they really help their peers. They offered one-on-one professional development for any teacher during the summer. They just said, call us and we're here to help you. And we were able to provide Chromebooks to teachers last June so that they would have the opportunity to use them over the summer in preparation for this new environment. We also have had initial dialogue about migrating from the current library structure to a learning commons model, which is part of that Tech Vision plan. And then right now, our media specialist in the library is visiting successful learning commons in other districts and bringing back information in terms of what they learned from implementing that model. And then the idea is to continue to engage in what we always call the continuous cycle of improvement, so that we offer professional development ongoing based on what teachers identify their needs are or what we see when we do our walkthroughs. At the elementary school, we've started to help teachers with that shift to Google. We started that last summer, and the fact that now all of our shared documents that used to exist in something called Shares, which was locally hosted, is now cloud-based, so teachers can access that at home. Excuse me. We target existing curriculum technologies such as everyday math and Reading Street online, and utilize the FOSS kits and those sort of things for STEM. One of the things that we were very excited about this year is that we offered some very specific opportunities for professional development based on teacher choice, and one of the threads was something called STEAM, which stood for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math. And we really looked at how to use rigor and relevance to increase the opportunity for innovation, for critical thinking in the classroom, and the opportunity that technology may hold to help that. So for next steps, we'll continue to implement the Tech Vision plan and allow for modifications. We're continually evaluating it and looking at what necessary changes need to be made based on budget or other factors. We continue to engage educators in differentiated professional development. The middle high school oftentimes will offer opportunities for workshops, and teachers select those accordingly. We continue to promote the use of technology as an instructional tool. for redesign and are in the process of doing some data collection around that now so we can gauge how teachers are feeling like this supports their role in instruction, and then maintaining, again, a continuous improvement cycle where we evaluate how well things are working, both from the mechanical or technical standpoint and also from the instructional standpoint. And then the only other thing that I'll say is it's very easy in this Tech Vision plan to get hung up on the stuff. So how many of this we're ordering, or how many of that we're ordering, or how we're deploying this. And at the end of the day, I just really want everyone to kind of be brought back to the idea that it's how it's integrated in the classroom. And one of the things we used to talk about in my old district is that the technology should really disappear behind the learning. So the learning should be front and center, and technology is just a tool to help students get from here to the future. And I would say that that's a continuous piece that we want to echo as well. If you want to see a copy of the Tech Vision plan, it's part of this presentation. I believe that it's on slide 2, slide 3. You can go and click, and you can launch that Tech Vision plan, or it's also available on our Carver website for those that are at home, and this is what it looks like. Any questions?
Meredith, the only thing I would add is, and it's kind of reiterating what you said, is I'd just like to thank all of our teachers, because I think they've worked really hard in terms of thinking about how they can use technology as a tool in the classroom. So I think there's been a lot of dedication on that, and really that everyone's doing it at their own pace. And we've had some discussions with the teachers in terms of, what are the specific requirements or expectations in regards in terms of their implementation. And we're saying we want you to take it at the pace that you feel comfortable with, to use the tool effectively as a learning device, and not just to replace what you could do in another way. And I think the teachers have really focused on that and have taken that to heart and really have worked hard. And different teachers are in different places in terms of how much they're integrating technology, and that's fine. Because we, like I said, we don't want it just to be a replacement of something they could do in another way. So I would like to thank the teachers for their hard work in terms of integrating the technology that they're bringing into the district.
Meredith, is that the most common platform they use is Google Docs even at the high school?
Yeah, so they call it G Suite now. It used to be Google Apps for Education, but we have access to that whole suite. So we I don't know if you guys remember this conversation, but we do something called the closed campus environment, which gives us the opportunity to have teachers and students kind of seamlessly communicate in an environment that complies with all the child internet protection type laws. So they can't email folks outside of outside of carver.org. Yeah. So a lot of teachers opt to use something called Google Classroom, which allows them to post assignments, and students can access that assignment, work on it individually, submit it accordingly, and be able to do that. Yeah.
Meredith, could you expand on the Learning Commons idea?
Yep. So it's definitely a trend that I would say has been taking place over the past 10 years in public education. And the idea is that we used to think of libraries as being very quiet spaces to learn. And so you go there and you quietly check out the book. And you go to the card catalog and you get your book and you walk on. And... Right. Clearly, I have my library voice. And so the idea is that what we know now about neural development and the way that learners learn is that learning can definitely take place in quiet spaces, but oftentimes in order to prepare kiddos for the future, it needs to be in a more dynamic environment. It doesn't mean that it should be recess level volume, but we should definitely make spaces where students can collaborate on projects, that they can pull in multimedia, so not just things that are digital, but sometimes they bring in makerspace type equipment, like a green screen, and they have students capture video, and they have different opportunities for that, which we have set up right now in the back of our library. But it's just a way of rethinking library design and the opportunity to have a place where students really come together and collaborate accordingly.
It reminds me of when I was in elementary school a long time ago. They didn't have a library per se. They had a media center, and they kind of had, it was kind of a library / stage / everything else, but I remember still getting yelled at for being too loud.
Well, there is such a thing as too loud. I doubt that you were too loud. But in this case, we really want people to be able to have a place to solve problems together, to be able to work together to achieve some sort of product that they're working on, and that we encourage that type of interaction as opposed to saying, shh, you sit there, he's studying.
Do you see traditional libraries ever going away, or?
That's a tough question. So I have to tell you that as much as I love a digital environment, I'm a person that likes to hold a book.
Me too.
And not always. I mean, I definitely read on my iPhone. I tend to type a lot on there, take a lot of notes on it. But at the end of the day, there's that feel of, being able to lie in a hammock or curl up on a couch with a good book. I wouldn't say that that practice is dying. I think that there are enough of us that still like that. But I do think that libraries, including town libraries, have definitely evolved to kind of meet the needs of a digital world. And so oftentimes they're able to provide access to media that we used to never either have because it wasn't around or because we didn't have the keys to get in there. So I know at both the Ramsey Library at Carver Middle High School and then again at Carver Public Library, there are opportunities for families, for community members, for students, for parents to be able to access ebooks. You can download them to your device, and then as you're driving along, you can listen to an ebook. There are opportunities to access all sorts of historical documents. So we used to have to travel, to either a World Book Encyclopedia or the National Archives to be able to look at some of those things, and now they're available. So I do believe that maybe the role of the traditional librarian has become less of someone that's trying to keep things in a quiet environment and maybe connect someone with a bookshelf. And now it's much more being able to look at a myriad of resources. And one of the things I really value is our current media specialist at the Middle High School Library tracks all that information. She's on the technology committee, and she works hard with teachers and students alike to be able to provide resources in a lot of different areas.
I think, sorry.
I was going to say the interesting part of that is, in terms of answering your question, the direction we're going, if you even just think about the new school and how the MSBA is funding projects, they're no longer funding or reimbursing computer labs. They're no longer funding or reimbursing traditional libraries. They're reimbursing project areas, common spaces, learning commons. And so if you look at the new school, we're going to have a room that we're calling the book collection. And really part of the rationale is obviously the trend education is moving in anyhow, but part of it is also looking where the money is in terms of that. There's limitations in terms of the MSBA piece in terms of what they're going to reimburse in terms of a library. And that's why we have a room that's called a book collection, which can only be so large, but we have all this project space in the new building because that space is reimbursable, moving towards that direction of having, in essence, a learning common at the end of each wing for each grade level. So in the new building in the elementary school, each grade level is really going to have its own little learning common or project area at the end of the wing.
It also ties back to a lot of what these two committees talk about when they're talking about technology as a tool, and the idea that there's a lot of research out there. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Most Likely to Succeed or read the book by Ted Dintersmith, but he did a lot of research and said, you know what, students at some of the most elite high schools in the country can cram for a test and do really, really well on a final in June, but when you give that same assessment when they return in August, they oftentimes will fail it. And so in that case, he's saying it's great that they were able in that one particular moment to apply the information and do well and get a 95 on the test. But what we're really looking for is to teach learners how to learn and to develop some permanence around these concepts. And oftentimes that comes from having to take that information and apply it. So whether it's solving a problem, whether it's looking at, how did we get that I-beam up on top of the new building when we had our topping off ceremony, all the physics involved with that, that's going to lead to a lot more permanence than just reading something in a textbook or trying to cram for, some sort of assessment.
Right. I hope, just as a aside, I hope the traditional library doesn't go away, especially in the town level, because I remember when I was a kid, sometimes you have a house full of kids, a lot of noise, you can't concentrate, even in your room is hard to concentrate, or maybe you might have a troubled family or something like that. You just need to kind of get away and have your own little time and quiet time to do your work in so you can concentrate. And I thought that was a great benefit to me, not that, I just had a lot of kids in my house, but having that time to spend, where someone would say to you, hey, quiet, it was beneficial, so, but I'm glad to hear so many other things are being introduced as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next topic. Creation of a new social emotional program at Carver Middle High School. So I'd like to invite Special Education Director Karen Tykerd to the microphone, and I'll give a little bit of background before Karen takes us through her presentation. We've had a substantial increase in students struggling with social emotional issues throughout the district, but specifically at the middle high school level. We currently have 8 students placed at Pilgrim Academy in Plymouth. We've also had several students who've had hospitalizations during the year, really over the last several years. We believe we can meet the needs of several of these students with an in-district program next year. Karen was going to walk us through the development of the vision and the proposed program. Ultimately, we believe the development of the program is in the best interest of our students. It has some financial benefits, both in the short term and in the long term. So with that, I'll ask Karen to kind of take us through the development of a program we're proposing for next year at the middle high school.
All right. So, like Scott said, we'd been looking we've noticed over the last few years that we've definitely increased the number of students that we're sending to these kind of more local collaboratives, especially in the high school level, and a lot of them being first-time students at high school age becoming eligible for special ed for the first time during high school. And a lot of this is that kind of teenage onset of social emotional or mood disorder kind of things. So we just pulled together a group to look at that and just try to figure out why haven't we been able to meet their needs in Carver, what's missing in our programs, because we certainly have a few programs, but what's missing that's causing this increase in our number of kids. And like Scott said, we have 8 at Pilgrim Academy, we have 1 at Reed. So we definitely have a pretty large number of students out in those programs at the high school level, and I'd say 8th grade on. So we pulled together a group of people to look at that. We've met several times over the year. It included special ed teacher, Kim Dwayne, the adjustment counselor, the people that you see there, and our behavior therapist, Melissa Leary, the school psych, a lot of the admin from the middle high school, and myself. So we started by just asking ourselves, so we looked at 2 things. We looked at those kids because Kim Dwayne had been aware of a program called the Bright Program that many districts are running that help kids transition back from short-term hospital stays. It helps them kind of transition and then be more successful in staying back in school. So we were looking at that as well as those kids that are now placed out and asking ourselves, what is the profile of those kids? Is there anything common about them? And what are the program components that are missing in our services now that cause them to need to be in an out-of-district placement? So Kim did give me a number, which
It's really, I always find that's a
Shocking.
striking number.
I know, I feel like I need to ask her again
No,
to check that,
but I believe
That
that's
might
an
be-
accurate number. I mean, being
I
the
actually-
principal of the middle high school,
I
that
actually
was
asked her if
what
that
we were
was repeats. She said that she felt like that was actually that many different kids. So,
yeah, and so that's over the last 3 or 4 years. That's been what we've been averaging.
yeah, 24 kids at the middle high school level that are needing some kind of short-term hospitalization.
Out of how many? We have what, 900 up there combined?
Yeah.
Yeah, 850.
And I'd say a majority of these are
Probably high school.
High school. So it is a large number. And I would say most of them are actually coming back and successfully reintegrating, most of those.
And a lot of them are not special education students or haven't been identified for special education yet at this point. Maybe the hospitalization leads to some testing or some larger
Which
discussion
has
about that. And
frequently.
it has. And some of these students are, it's really a wide range. It's students who are very academically successful to students who are struggling in school. I mean, it's the whole gamut of our student population. So I don't think my sense would be, I don't feel like we can narrow it down and say it's this group that's having the struggle. It really is across populations.
So we looked at all those things, and then we kind of came up with a goal for a program, which is just to provide services for students grade 9 through 12 with the option of 8th grade as well, that are struggling to attend school due primarily to anxiety, depression, or PTSD. And that seemed to be what's the common thread in those students. And in addition, the program would have the flexibility to provide that short-term transitional services to students returning from hospital placements. So we were trying to use those resources to really hit both of those populations. And the main components that we felt were needed that maybe we didn't, some of which we don't have in some of the other programs we have. The main one was the ability to be self-contained and not be tied to the rotating schedule. I think that's what's caused us to need to send students out, because our GAP program and our MAP program are full inclusion programs. So students still need to be able to go into all their regular ed classes for their content, and they need to be able to just integrate in with the rest of the school. And the students that are needing these other placements are students that their anxiety or their depression is just creating making it very difficult for them to do that. And they really need a more sheltered, self-contained, or at least ability to be self-contained. And the rotating schedule just doesn't allow for that currently, the way we have things set up. So that would be the number one thing that this program would need to have. We looked at a flexible start time, the need for MCAS prep and credit recovery, because many of those students have attendance issues that have now caused credit holes. The option for internships and work experiences. So most of our kids that in high school that get those internship opportunities, they have to have their credits and grades have to be at a certain level. But a lot of these students would really benefit from those types of opportunities. So we wanted to make sure that that was in place, and then daily counseling and an option for self-paced and online classes. A lot of the students that are out in these placements now are really academically capable students. It's really just the social emotional piece, or the emotional piece that's causing them difficulty. So I think they're good candidates for online classes as long as there's support, staff support, to really keep them up with the work. And that would just allow them to engage in some areas of interest for them and be a little more self-paced. So those were the kind of the main components that we were looking at. And I went back and looked at just kind of historical data, because you don't want to start something if it's just a kind of short-term need or something like that. But so just looking at the number of students that we have referred out over since FY10 actually. And these are only the students at the middle high school level referred to these type of programs. So this doesn't include other types of disabilities where students are being referred out. So it really averages about 5.5 students a year that we're referring out that need that kind of programming. And you'll see that, I think that FY15 and 16 year, some of those 16 might have happened at the end of 15, but anyway, the number, that's what pushed us up to that number. So then to look at, I know it's a, tough budget time to be asking to look for any kind of addition, so it really needs to kind of fund itself. So if we look at the cost for the students that are currently at PAC Academy, even with the cost of just 4 students so we did do some talking to some of the families and the students, and I know some of the students that really, a lot of them want to be back. If there was the programming for them, they do want to be back in the Carver Community School. So even if you look at 4 students coming back, that's a savings of that $139,956 for next year. Those are the tuition costs for those kids. We estimated out our program cost, and you can see that there with a special ed teacher, a paraprofessional, a counselor at 0.5. If we were able to, if more students kind of came back to district, we could probably make that counselor a full-time counselor. That would be ideal. We're looking at probably some tutoring from content area teachers, some online classes, and a transportation component. So with just the 4 students, returning to this program, if that would cover the startup cost for that, for that program. And I do think there's a potential for several more students to maybe come back. I think, there's a potential that we could actually see a savings of up to 200,000 probably. And I think it would maintain, if you continue to look at the trend of, okay, we're gonna have another 5 kids that are gonna need this, next year, it's gonna just continue to support itself.
And we've already identified 2 or 3 students
Yeah,
who currently are not out-of-district placements, but are potentially could be out-of-district placements for next year, who we feel like could also be in this program. So the 4 students listed there, you've begun some level of dialogue with their families. Obviously, the program doesn't exist yet, so we can't say, we've had the level of conversation of, if the program existed in our school district, would you take it under consideration? And we feel like these 4 families are definitely interested. It could possibly be more than these 4, possibly a 5th family. And so actually, the tuition cost, the $34,989 is what was budgeted next year for each of those students. And so the 139,956 is currently in our budget. If we brought in the program at 129,284, we'd actually be building the program at a lower number than we're going to pay for those students who are out of district next
So
year.
what's that caption at the top referring to?
So right now, they're proposing an increase of $10,000 per student. It's not finalized yet, but in their budget proposal for PAC Academy, they're asking for $10,000.
So it would actually be 44.9.
yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
That's actually, they're actually saying that they feel like that's the minimum number that they're gonna increase. Now,
44.
and PAC Academy has not increased for a long time.
Yeah.
But it is for a district that has a lot of students there, it's gonna be it'll be a big number.
Well, just because, that's because it's proposed, because in the chart, it's 34.9.
It's not, they're still going through their budget
So you're
process.
saying we budgeted 139, but that might not be enough anyway.
Correct.
Right.
Right, and then in terms of responding to that question, that goes to the special ed circuit breaker account that's being proposed by the town to help support our special ed costs. If that was passed the town meeting, the basis of that is, it's based on what our projections were, what our numbers are as of February 1st. So the additional, if they did increase the tuition to 44,000 next year, that would be paid out of the special ed reserve fund. It would not be a direct impact on our budget, assuming that was all passed the town meeting. But ultimately, it's still a real cost, absolutely.
It's still $50,000.
Yep, it's still a real
If
cost.
you're talking about keeping them in-house with this plan, you're saving 10,000 at
Yeah.
cost that isn't accurate anyway.
Yeah, and potentially long-term, as long as we believe there's going to be a population of 4 to 5 students who meet this criteria, even the growth of teachers' salaries or whatever our costs are going to be, that's going to mirror the tuition increase costs of the out-of-district placements. And so we're just looking back since 2010 and said on average, we've been referring 5 students, 5.5, let's say 5 students out to out-of-district placements with this type of need. If we can keep those 5 students in-house, we feel like that we can better meet their needs. Several of them do want to be in the community school here. They want to be here in Carver. They're Carver students, and financially, it could be a positive for us.
So, Meredith, could you go back a slide? Do you mind?
And I don't know if Janelle, do you wanna come up if?
Two quick
Janelle was
questions
part
on
of
that.
the
Would that be an
transfer.
option for them then? Would they be able to choose to come back to the district, or would this sort of be what we would establish?
Ultimately, every student on an IEP, it's the decision of the IEP team placement. So this would be a proposed placement by the school district. The parents could counter, and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong anywhere along the line. The parents could counter a different proposal, and the team will make an agreement in terms of where they are. In terms of starting for next year, these are 4 families we're saying we've had a level of conversation, and they definitely have an interest in returning. As I said, there's 8 students at Pilgrim. We're gonna explore this with possibly all those students, but it may not be a match for all those students. But we feel like these are students that it's a match for, and obviously we'd have to go through the team meeting process to do that.
Well, the reason I asked her to go back is because even if you look at the lowest year, it's at 3, and if you took 3 at 44,000, you're still looking at less than what the proposed cost is to do what you want to do with this.
Right. And we're gonna also, with that staff, they'll be in the building, they'll be able to also support those kids coming back from hospitalizations, they'll be able to do more than just.
And we didn't talk about that piece, but we actually were looking to run a little bit of a hybrid. Karen referenced what was called a Bright program. Some school districts have established a Bright program, and what the Bright program does, it really focuses on, so we're not the only school districts that's seeing an increase in hospitalizations amongst high school age students. It's really happening across the South Shore, and I think it's happening beyond the South Shore, but I can speak to the South Shore. So there are a couple school districts along the South Shore who've developed these Bright programs, maybe not as fully staffed as what we're proposing. They might have, some of them, their staffing is as low as a paraprofessional. Some of them have a paraprofessional and a teacher. Some of them just have a teacher or just a counselor. How the program is staffed varies from school district to school district, but ultimately it's a place for a student who's out of hospitalization to come back for a week or two, in essence, be tutored and slowly transition back into their classes, not to just walk back into the door and return to a full course load. And the person in the program and the student and their family make the decision of when it's the best for them to transition back to their classes full time. The goal for those students, for most of them, is to return back to a full schedule. But that transition from being out on a short-term hospitalization of 3 to 5 to 10 days and then just walking back into your full load is difficult, and some students find that challenging and hard to overcome. So other districts have developed this Bright program. So our thought process is, if we had 4 or 5 students in this program full-time, that with the staffing, they could also help assist those students who are transitioning back from hospitalizations, give them a place to be where they can slowly integrate back into their full schedule. We didn't talk about that a lot, but so Karen, is there anything you want to add on to that?
So is
James,
that-
I don't even know if that answered your question. I'm not sure what your question was,
No,
but.
I appreciate it. So let's say that all 8 of those students decided to stay. Would what's being proposed be able to cover that workload, or would that have to be something that would be looked at depending on how many students were there?
Oh, so like if all 8 of them wanted to come back to
Yeah,
Carver and
like
go
is
into
it
this
one pair,
program?
one
Yeah,
teacher,
so
and a half counselor?
We're figuring that staffing could staff 8 to 12 students.
Okay. So technically, then this, I don't want to say savings, I don't think that's the right word, but for lack of a better term, the savings, what's the accessibility of that? Is that?
I think there's a couple students who the general feeling is staying at the collaborative is the appropriate setting for
Yeah.
them. So I don't think we're really proposing that all 8 come back.
Yeah.
That's
We
my
have some
general sense.
graduations too. so
And we have
not
some
of
graduations.
graduation.
So I think we're, in terms of realistically for next year, we feel confident with 4 with a possible 5. Is that a
And
fair?
possible 6.
Possible 6.
The 3 additional, James, so the 4 that we have on paper,
Yeah.
total 130,000.
Okay.
So if we can recoup that without adding on anything besides adding on another .5 counselor, that's another $100,000 back in our pocket.
Yeah, we do feel like a full-time counselor is the best match, but we have to be fiscally responsible in terms
Yeah.
of that. So we wouldn't want to bring that full-time counselor on unless we really knew we had 5 or 6 students who we weren't going to be paying that tuition for.
And also beginning to project out for those students that we mentioned previously who are currently still enrolled within our school structure, who right now, we know that they potentially, if we don't have this system in place, would be looking to be outplaced. So we want to also avoid that and making sure there's no transition for them to an outside program if we can provide the services.
Well, I think, Karen, you've done a great, I'm sorry, Andrew. I think you've done a great job trying to bring things in-house as much as possible, and it seems to benefit us in every way that it's happening, so. Looks good on paper.
Scott, I'm not proposing this, but I'm just curious if it can even happen. If we did go down this road and we had available spots, can we then open it up to other districts and be able to benefit from?
We can. So if there was available slots and the program had some success, we could tuition students from out of district into that. We do that. We have done that in other programs in the past. I think the program, Karen can probably speak to this more directly than I can, but the program I think we've done that the most often in is our post-vocational program at the high school. But we have done it in other programs as well.
Yeah, so we almost always, we have 1 student tuitioned into that program now. So we could certainly do that. I think, it takes a couple years to make sure your program's running really well, and,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think we'd advocate that in year 1, but if we felt like the program was,
yeah, but if we started
and
to, if we
established
had
and-
low numbers at some point, when some other district had need, that can sometimes work out. Districts are trying to work more between each other now so,
And then they would pay us,
right.
correct?
Yeah, then we would establish a tuition, and they would pay us a tuition to attend. I mean, actually, it's one of the things that we spoke about at our meeting with Senator Pacheco today and Representative Giffords, that talked about, developing programs within your own community that might have some interest for other students, whether it be special ed students or, eventually school choice students. Not that right now we haven't made a decision on school choice and we haven't been taking a vote on that, but, what I talked about in terms of, you want to maybe try to develop some programs that might attract students to your school, because there is a financial.
And the responsibilities would fall on the other districts as far as busing or
Transportation.
transportation, yep, okay.
And we do want to be careful, so there is that whole idea of maintenance of effort in terms of like, we want to make sure that we're not like taking money that's being spent and really reducing it drastically and bringing kids back to some like subpar like program. So it's really, right now, it's really that transfer of money that we're spending to an out-of-district school to allow students to really stay within their school. And I think the biggest thing it does, though, is allow more efficient use of staffing, so that staffing that we're using for that program and this kind of training that we bring in and the supports that we bring in and the experiences we have working with those students can benefit a wider group of Carver staff and students.
So, looking at the impetus behind the development of this program, it wasn't that we said, look, we have a budget we have budget issues this year and we have budget concerns, so what ways can we try to save money? That's wasn't the intent at all. It's a concern that Karen's had for the last couple of years, myself as the former principal of the middle high school, in terms of the number of students who are struggling with social emotional issues and what can we do to best service their needs. And you begin to look at, well, if we have 8 students at Pilgrim Academy, and that's a number we've had for several years, maybe we can do something for those students here. Now, there may be an aside where there might be a budgetary benefit to us. Our approach here this evening is really to say to the committee that there's not a negative impact budgetarily. But ultimately, the goal here, isn't to try to solve a budget issue.
No.
I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
And Janelle, any impact, do you think, let's say it was 4 to 8 kids coming into we have a small school, coming into the existing base of students, do you think that they would be a positive impact, no impact? What's the thoughts? I'm just curious.
I think it'd be a positive impact just because we're able to then provide additional resources that we don't have currently. One of the things that the conversation came from is having the programs we currently have, such as MAP and GAP, really start to identify the students who don't fall under those particular parameters to figure out what type of students are we not able to really address and figure out how we as a school can move towards addressing those student needs. And ultimately, we want every single child who lives in Carver to be going to school in Carver. That's what we're working towards. So this just would allow us to bring that in and understand that the current structure doesn't work for them. So if we can figure out what that structure would be, it could be nothing but beneficial to have them then start to engage in some of the other social aspects that they may not be necessarily getting from some of those other programs, such as athletic programs, such as the arts and the drums and those types of programs that we could provide.
So this is like a separate program too that you're talking about, so geographically, is there a plan?
So we've started talking about that, but I feel like, we wanted to get to the point where we kind of had the green light to move forward and then get the staffing for it so that they can be a part of looking at that. But we've started to look at like spaces, because the program does need to have a alternative entrance. A lot of these kids don't feel comfortable walking in with the whole population of students. So it needs to kind of have that separate ability to be a separate space, but still be in the building. So we're looking at the spaces. But it will involve some moving around of some things, probably.
Any other questions?
I have a quick one, if you don't mind. Karen, I see it says program cost with insurance. Have you dealt with getting reimbursements from insurance companies before, or is that?
So no, so that's actually their tuition, the salary cost including insurance. So Brad wanted to make sure that was,
Health insurance.
that health insurance was.
Oh,
factored-
okay.
we
I thought
factored
the
in-
insurance was reimbursing us.
No.
no.
I'm like, geez, I didn't know they covered that.
So actually, and there is a piece of that we do get, the town gets it actually.
Okay.
Kids that have Medicaid can get some reimbursement for their therapies and stuff like that, so we submit and that money comes straight back to the town.
Okay.
But that's not a part of that.
Oh, thank you for
That was-
clarifying
yes.
that for me. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? We just wanted to make the committee aware of the proposal of this program, and, I support its development, and wanted to have you have opportunity to look at, whatever budgetary impacts that it may have.
And I did give you in your packets, you have like a kind of a more in-depth look at both of those pieces.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Very much.
Our next item under management and operations is a continuation of our discussion in terms of IT consolidation. Meredith, if you could bring up the organizational chart, thank you. You read my mind. This is a continuation of our discussion on consolidation of IT with the town. As a reminder, in this model, the schools would take the leadership in providing IT services to both the school and the town. The superintendent would have joint oversight and management of the position with the town administrator, but on a daily basis, the person in the position would report directly to the superintendent. The position would be funded through $25,000 from the school budget, which is currently paid to LCN Technologies for network services, $50,000 from the town operating budget that they currently use for technology support and network oversight. The Community Compact Grant would fund the remainder of the position in its first year. Then the town is committed to cover additional funding for the position in the following years. So I know we began this discussion a few meetings ago. I think this would be our third time discussing it individually as a committee, and we discussed it once at the joint committee meeting, which a couple members were unable to attend. There was a proposal to take a vote that night, but we decided to not take a vote because we didn't want to make this decision without the full committee. So I do feel like we've discussed this several ways. I've thought about this a lot. I've gone back and forth on it throughout the years we've worked on it, and ultimately, and I think I made this pitch last time that we met individually, that I do think that this provides the opportunity for some benefits for us as a school community. So we're going to take $25,000, which we were going to spend anyhow on network services, and be able to transition that $25,000 into a person who would work directly for us. Our experience working with the outside network provider hasn't been outstanding, and I think the opportunity to have someone who is a worker and works for us and with us. Now, obviously, that person also has to service the town. So I'm not saying that's going to be a full-time addition of an employee for the Carver Public Schools, but I do believe it has the opportunity to provide us with a benefit and better service for our IT under the same financial structure. So at this time, I'm supporting the consolidation of the IT services. I know the Board of Selectmen did vote on Tuesday evening. They voted in favor 5-0. So a vote of this committee tonight in support would have us move forward in terms of actually signing the agreement and starting to take steps towards hiring the person. But with that, I'll open it up to discussion from the committee.
Anyone have questions?
I only have a comment, and it's minutia and probably not really important, but when I looked at this, the first thing that really stood out to me is I would like to see an arrow connecting the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, because if this is a change that's gonna happen, I think this needs to be a constant chain of communication between us. So this was something that I think, just to check progressions, would probably happen anyway, but just looking at that organizational chart, it seems like a piece that's missing, that our communication at our quarterly meetings should always deal with how this is progressing and how this is working, and making sure that everything's got the right flow with it.
And there is a piece of the agreement that states that either side can back out at any time. Technically, 1 year's notice. So say a year from now, the decision was this hasn't really gone well. The school committee could vote to back out of this agreement. It would stay in effect for 1 more year and then would move forward. So if anything changed in terms of funding of this position, or if there's anything the committee wasn't comfortable with, they could certainly have that dialogue with the Board of Selectmen and make a decision to go in a different direction. And right now, financially, we haven't changed anything. So there's no money from our technology budget beyond the $25,000 that we pay for network management that's moving anyplace. There's no money from the town's technology budget. So in terms of separating ourselves from this agreement wouldn't be extremely complicated. But yeah, ultimately, I understand what you're saying, James, in terms of having that connection between the Board of Selectmen and the school committee.
No, I'm good. I'm good to vote.
I'd make a motion to accept the consolidation of IT services between the town and the schools.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, next agenda item. Just a very quick school building report update. On Thursday, March 30th, we had a topping off ceremony for the new elementary school. We were very pleased that the executive director of the Massachusetts School Building Authority, Jack McCarthy, attended. He did a great job. He interacted with he was great interacting with the kids. He made a very short speech, but it was poignant. He involved the kids in it, and he did a great job. So I was impressed with Jack's role in the ceremony. So I'd just like to thank him for coming down here and participating. The building is moving along on time and on budget. So we've been really doing well. As an example of that, the original schedule submitted for the construction of the building was that the topping off ceremony would be the first week in May. And we actually had that topping off ceremony on March 30th. So almost a full month, really a full month ahead of schedule. And I would say right now, the construction company, CTA, may not say that we're a full month ahead of schedule. They might say a couple weeks, but we are moving ahead on schedule, and the building's coming along really well. The next decision, I wanted to prompt the committee for this a little bit tonight. We started to do some research on naming of buildings. So the committee does have a policy about naming buildings. And the school committee policy states that the committee will develop a proposal for a name or several names. So it's really the choice of the committee. The committee can say, we feel like this should be the name, and just have one name. It could be the Carver Elementary School. That could be the name. Or the committee could have a discussion and say, you know what, we'd like to think about a couple of different names. And how our policy reads is that the school committee would draft a proposal for names and then forward that to the school building committee to vote. So that's how the school committee policy is written. We're starting to get into that time where we might have to make some decisions around a name, because as the project moves along, they're starting to think about things like the sign and the cast for the sign. So at our May meeting, I'll put that on as an agenda item. So if people want to start thinking about possible names, right now, my general sense is I like the Carver Elementary School, but I'm
Creative.
Yes, being creative is not something that I'm often marked as. I'm usually dull and boring, black and white.
I know that this conversation, Scott, has gone other places with the selectmen, so this is a discussion that probably might
Yeah,
need
so
to
we'll
happen
follow.
in the committee, so there's understanding of.
Yeah, well, we can follow up with that. But I wanted to make you aware of what our policy actually stated. So there is a school committee policy on the naming of buildings. I didn't know if everybody was aware of that. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that and say we're going to bring it up in May. May, I'll give you a copy of the policy, and you can start thinking about possible names.
Who holds the final?
I would say the way the policy is written. So the school committee has a policy about naming its buildings. Ultimately, the building is under the control of the school committee. And so since we have a specific policy that says how the building is to be named, I would say that would be the policy the town would follow. And the policy says that the school committee will draft a list of possible names, present that to the school building committee, and the school building committee would actually vote the name. Now, the school building committee is made up of representation of the entire town. So if you think of who's on the school building committee, it's members of the school committee, it's myself, it's the town administrator, it's community members, which I think there's not a member of the Board of Selectmen on any longer. Dick Ward, as the chairman of the school building committee, was a member of the Board of Selectmen. So, that, I think the building committee is supposed to be representative of the town as a whole.
I just remember there being a little confusion. I think remember last fall, this came up a little bit, and I thought someone one of the selectmen had thought they had the final say with
That's
town
why
buildings.
That's why I'm saying there needs to be some clarification of that,
You
just
remember
to be
that?
sure. But I've always promoted the idea that I think the building committee's done a fantastic job representing.
No, I agree,
the
yeah.
community, and I believe that it should be within their power and authority to do
Yeah.
it anyway.
I just didn't want to have a
Yeah,
squabble.
right, and I don't know if the Board of Selectmen has a policy stating about the naming of public buildings, but I do know the school committee has a policy that states how a school building would be named.
Okay.
So I would say that would follow the school committee's roles and responsibilities.
So it's black and white.
Yeah,
Black-
and the Board of Selectmen may have something black and white and another description. We can work that out with them.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of that was foreshadowing what's going to go discussion we're going to have in May. Andrew, James, anything school building as members of the school building committee besides we selected colors or?
Meetings.
I was just thinking about it, actually, from what you were just saying. Is there any way to, like, reach out to the community for ideas, or get the kids involved, get parents or grandparents, people that aren't, I don't know, just
Ultimately,
another-
that is the purview of the committee. So we can discuss that in May.
All right, we're gonna
So
wait till
it's
May.
right, so the committee can direct me as the superintendent to do as you will. So if you want a large process that's gonna be a survey and parent input and student input, not saying I don't want that process, then if you direct me in that direction, that's the way we'll take it.
You know, watch out, we're gonna have a school sign full of emojis. Emoji language.
Well, we just have to move quick, because just with May
Yeah,
to June.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time, so I've been talking, we have weekly construction meetings, I've talked to the architect, I've actually asked the architect for a specific timeline, and our project managers to say, when do we need a final decision on this? They were looking to do some casts and some molds coming up soon, but from my discussion on Thursday, it sounded like, they don't have to do them all at once. So they can do some of the other things that they know what it's gonna be now, and then that piece could happen a little later in the process.
Did they finalize the colors? Talking about colors?
I wasn't at the last meeting. The interior, the exterior has been.
We did finalize the interior colors, so each wing of the building is gonna be, I don't have the map in front of me, so I don't have each of the colors. But basically, I keep calling them the wings, but each grade level. Each grade level is going to be represented by a color, so there'll be 6 colors in total. That color is going to be represented on the floor, through the flooring, not through the walls. And the color of the wing is not going to be fully, so the floor in the classroom, let's say one of the colors is I'm not great I'm colorblind. I'm not great with colors. Well, let's say one of the colors is a purple type of color. So one of the colors is a light purple. Doesn't mean that whole floor is going to be purple. There's going to be a stripe in that floor that's purple and an entranceway, but every classroom in that grade level will look the same. No, we already picked the colors. I am not. I said the school building committee picked the colors. I was on the school building committee. I was there when we picked the colors. They were presented to us by HMFH. I know you're saying that because I'm saying I'm not a great color person. So there are 6 colors representing the 6 grade levels in the building. Each wing or floor for a grade level will have a specified color. Then those colors will also run through the core of the building on the floor in the small group rooms. So it's good. There's going to be a decent amount of color, but a step back from maybe some of the colors that we saw when we went to visit Milford. Remember we talked about that last time? And HMFH, our architect, said that several of our teachers went to the Christopher McAuliffe School. I didn't go. I don't know. Meredith, did you go to the Christopher McAuliffe School when they went and visited New Hampshire? That was built by the same architect, HMFH. And they said there was a lot of color. And at the school we visited in Milford was a little toned down from the Christopher McAuliffe School in New Hampshire. And they're saying that our school is a little toned down from what we saw in Milford. Milford had a lot more of the colors on the walls. Our coloration is all going to be on the floor. It's all going to be part of the flooring.
Christopher McAuliffe was kind of sensory overload.
Yeah. You went into that visit?
I didn't, but we had slides
Yeah.
that afterward where they were showing a lot of them.
And we felt that way when we went to Milford a little bit. So I went to the visit, Andrew went to the visit in Milford, and we felt a little bit like there was a little bit too much color. Not that we're opposed to color, and we don't want it to be drab, we want it to be bright, we want it to be exciting. It is an elementary school. But when we went to the school in Milford, we felt like there was just a little too much crisscrossing of colors.
So the walls are,
Walls are a
Constant?
neutral color, yeah. So all the color is going to be established through the flooring.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't tell you all 6 colors.
I didn't get that. Can you repeat all that?
I think, anything else on the building? All right. Next item on the agenda is update on accelerated repairs project at the middle high school. So we had a kickoff meeting for our accelerated repairs project at the middle high school on Wednesday, March 29th. The general contractor is J.J. Cordasi. The project manager is Left Field Associates. The architects are Johnson and Roberts. We're going to be looking to begin construction as early as May 15th in the boiler room, and we're going to possibly be doing roof areas as early as May 29th. But I wanted to give you an update on the warrant, a warrant item that's going to be on the town meeting tomorrow to give the public and the committee an understanding of what that warrant item is in terms of capital. So Meredith, if you scroll down a little bit on that capital improvement budget, see where it's bulleted out right there. Yep, that's great. So in FY15, the town actually approved the town administrator to move forward and spend up to $7,430,000 on the project. In essence, that was our ceiling, based upon the concept that the MSBA would reimburse 50% of the costs of the project. And we had this discussion last year. Remember, we found out that the MSBA wasn't going to do anything in the additions because the additions weren't 20 years old at the time we applied for the project. And to be reimbursed by MSBA for a roof, boiler, windows, or accelerated repair project, this building has. You okay, Paula? the building has to be at least 20 years old. We came up with that about a little over 16% of our building is part of the additions that were built in 1997. So 16% of the roof, 16% of the doors and windows, in theory, it may not be the exact number, would not be reimbursed. The original warrant article passed by the town said that they were only going to reimburse things that were 50% reimbursable, up to $7.4 million. So this project, when it actually went out to bid, came well under the expected cost of $7.4 million. So the capital item on the warrant tomorrow, it would reduce the town authorization to $5.4 million. And then there's a breakdown of how that money would be allocated. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean there was a savings of $2 million. The town hasn't borrowed any of this money yet. It was just an authorization for the town to borrow up to $7.4 million. The good news is the town doesn't have to borrow up to $7.4 million to do this project. The town only has to borrow up to $5.4 million. So the town warrant article under capital, this is all under the capital item, says that the town would authorize the town administrator to move forward to get a loan of up to $5.4 million. Now, then he breaks down in the warrant, the town breaks down how that money would be spent. $4.4 million would be for completion of the project. That $4.4 million is going to be reimbursed 50% by the MSBA. They're paying for 50% because that's part of the project that's not the addition. But then the town is asking to say, can we allocate another $1 million to cover things that, so we can get them done? You know, if we originally estimated the project 7.4 and we can get it done for 5.4 and do everything, why wouldn't we do that? So it's actually broken down. 4.4 million for completion of the project, 50,000 to replace HVAC units not reimbursed by MSBA, 250,000 to replace 2 makeup air units that serve the middle high school kitchen. These are not reimbursed by the MSBA. These units are tied to the exhaust units in the stoves and the ovens. One of them currently does not function, and the units are so old that Dave used the parts from the broken one to repair the one that works. If that makes sense. So we have 2 of these hair handling units. One doesn't operate. The other one does operate, but if anything breaks in it, the only place we can get parts is from the one that doesn't operate. And eventually that one's going to run out. So now that is not reimbursed by the MSBA because that's not considered, even though it sits on your roof, they don't consider those rooftop exhaust units as part of the roof, and they don't consider it as part of the boiler or heating system. So it's just not, you can't get it done through an accelerated repair project, but the town is looking to authorize to replace those. $50,000 to replace the doors and windows in the 1997 addition, not reimbursed by the MSBA, and $150,000 to repair the roof that's part of the addition, not reimbursed by the MSBA. Then the last piece of this, what the town is proposing to tie in, is remember our consent order from DEP, because we have to redo our well and irrigation system? The estimate on that project, we don't have final numbers on that project. The other numbers up there are more solid. The $250 to replace the air makeup units, the $50,000 for the doors in the addition. But we don't have a number yet for the well, but it's, the estimates we've had is it could be up to $500,000 to replace the well and treatment infrastructure at the middle high school. So this is all getting wrapped into one warrant article. Okay? So it's saying, is the town willing to authorize the town administrator to, in essence, take a bond up to $5.4 million to do all of these things? And I wanted to just have some clarity before people went into town meeting, more so for the committee, so that you understood what was happening here, and also for the community to understand what was happening here. I'm sure it's going to be, if people ask questions about it, it's going to be explained at town meeting as well, that this is really, in many ways, this is a win-win for the town. You know, originally estimated that this project was going to cost us $7.4 million to do the whole thing. And now we're saying it's going to cost us $5.4 million to do the whole thing, and actually some additional pieces, like those air makeup units over the, honestly, those were not being considered as part of the project. The $500,000 to do the water treatment system that we have to do, we're on a DEP consent order that has to occur. So that's all being wrapped in together under one capital item.
I was gonna say, the 7.4 didn't include everything though, so that wasn't everything done.
Well, the 7.4 did include everything. At that time, we felt like everything would be reimbursed. We didn't, and when that was passed by town meeting, I believe in FY15, in the 2015 town meeting, at that time, the town didn't realize or didn't have knowledge of the 20-year requirement. So we didn't find that out until we went out last year and when we drew up the proposal last year, sent it into MSBA, and they kicked it back to us and said, just so you know, we're not going to reimburse these things because they're not 20 years old yet. And then we had a whole discussion with them about what does 20 years old mean, because it was so close. It was like a few months. We were like, we can even show that the roof was done. But we didn't have, they based completion as when there was substantial completion and occupancy on the additions. And that was not 20 years old yet. We even said, we made the argument, we went to the MSBA and said, well, by the time we actually start doing it, they'll be 20 years old, which is true. Because we're going to start doing the project this May, and that project was completed before May of 1997. And so when they started the project, it was all going to be 20 years old. But MSBA didn't buy that rationale either. In essence, they said, we made an appeal, and they said, there's certain things we have to be black and white, and if it's not, we open ourselves up to other, to other school communities where we've denied them because it wasn't 20 years old. So if it's not 20 years old, we don't reimburse it. So then we accepted that and moved forward with some question whether we were going to do everything. When we originally went out to bid, we were thinking we may not be able to do everything. But then when the bids came in such a positive light, we went back and said, you know what, I think we have the opportunity here to get it all done. And so that opportunity is there for the community. So that I think that's a good thing. So I don't know if any members of the committee have any questions about what's happening with that warrant article. Or what's happening with the accelerated repair project at the middle high school.
I take it the selectmen and the finance committee have approved of this? Down the bottom?
If you scroll, I didn't put the whole article from the warrant, but yes, this was voted by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, I believe, both full support.
And capital outlay.
And
Capital outlay.
Not only saving $2 million, but these are things that are gonna, we're building a new elementary school. Now we're creating longevity for the middle high school, which was needed, because that was a big question of how or when that was gonna get done with this new school going in.
It's wise.
And it makes sense, if we have the opportunity to do everything,
Yeah.
it makes sense to do everything. So this is gonna be a full replacement of all doors, all windows, the entire roof, those rooftop, the kitchen rooftop units, and then also tying in the DEP consent order, which we have to do to upgrade the water and irrigation, the water and the water treatment system there is going to put the middle high school in a much better place. So, really, in September of 2018, September of 2018, when we walk into that new building over at the elementary school, our facilities are going to be in a much better place than they have been probably ever. Or maybe since the middle high school was first built. So at least in the last 20 years, our overall school facilities are going to be in a better place than they've been.
Well, so will our utility costs.
Windows, doors.
Long-term.
Utility costs,
Systems, new windows, new doors.
there's an estimate that actually the new system at the elementary school is going to be more expensive, it's going to be more costly, yeah. So hopefully we'll utilize some savings at the middle high school by having newer windows. Obviously there's a lot that goes behind newer windows, helps save energy
Because
costs.
it's a bigger unit, or what's the reason?
Yeah, essentially, we're going from a lower voltage building to one that has technology components in every single classroom and a lot more feed-ins.
I don't mean the elementary school, I mean
Oh, no, I was talking about the middle high school. I thought you were talking overall, sorry, I was just probably the elementary school. No, the middle high school, we should be able to run more efficiently, I would assume. Yeah, with new doors and windows will run more efficiently. I was looking district-wide, saying the new elementary school actually we think might bring some additional costs onto
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, and Dave and I are actually looking at possibly getting LED lights in the entire middle high school. That's on our to-do list going forward, so.
The other discussion that we've had about the accelerated repair project is we have the opportunity to change back to colors. We have the opportunity to change the colors of the windows at the middle high school. So we met with the administration of the building, myself, Dave, Brad. We've talked to the town administrator. He was involved in the conversation just from their perspective in terms of what do you thought of having a different color? Right now, the windows are brown. They kind of fade into the brick. A color might give it a little bit more of a pop. Might give it a new fresher look. I know at the building committee we had a lot of discussion about cranberry. So we've looked at actually a really deep cranberry color to do the new windows, and there seems to be support of that, and that new kind of deep cranberry color would also mix well with there's some reddish in the brick, and I know cranberry and red aren't exactly the same. But
discussion?
right. I'm going back to old discussions in other meetings but that we feel like this deep cranberry, we will put some samples, looked around different areas and said, we think it might be a nice color to go with the windows. So that's where we're leaning towards right now, is going like a deep cranberry color for all the windows at the middle high school.
It's not going to be burnt red, is it?
No. I know one member of the committee, their concern was, because I know I sent an email out to the group about this, one member of the committee was concerned that it might fade to a pinkish. So I actually followed up and asked that question, and what they're using for paint is it's a powdered system, I guess, and it's a powdered application. It's supposed to hold its color a lot longer than like a latex paint or an oil stain, which tends to fade. So they're saying it's a newer technology that actually cost-wise there's no cost difference. There was no cost difference for a color. So they said to us, doesn't matter to us when we go to manufacture them, whether we make them brown or cranberry or orange or yellow, whatever, we can make them whatever color you want, without a cost differential. And supposedly this is supposed to hold its color really well, and so hopefully you won't have a fading to a pink.
It's probably a powder coated aluminum.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Would that be interior and exterior, or?
That would be interior and exterior.
I'm sure everybody, I'm assuming everybody agrees that one of the things that I think this committee should look to have their eyes to is longevity of all the buildings and getting as much life as we can out of them, obviously, and I think these are great steps for the high school, middle high school.
Any other questions on where we stand in terms of that project? And we'll be giving more information as that moves along. The confidence is fairly high that they're going to be able to be done by September 1st. I guess I just want the community to know either way, there was probably going to be some disruption, either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Our goal and our target is to have everything done when school opens next year. So we're taking on a little disruption this year by allowing this, starting the boiler room. The boiler room is actually set behind the gym. If people don't know where it is, it's not near an instructional space. They can work in the boiler room without much disruption to the school. The roof, going to the roof pieces might be a little more complicated. We've identified the roof pieces over the gyms as a place to start, not over instructional areas. And so the, roofers on the roof are going to be loud. There's gonna be an impact there. And also there's a possibility they're gonna look to remove some of the windows as well, prior to the end of the school and replace them with temporary windows. We have a meeting coming up on that, actually this Wednesday, to have a discussion of what that would look like and how many windows we would be talking about. But as I said, having some disruption in those last couple of weeks in June, we feel like is better for the school district than to have disruption in September. And it is a fairly large project. There's a lot of windows. There's a lot of windows, a lot of doors for them to get out and replace over the summer. Anything else? Okay. Next up is budget transfers.
Yep.
So Brad had some budget updates for us.
Yep, in the drive sheet, you'll see I uploaded a current budget as of 4/1 for FY17. And in the second tab, you'll see a transfer request. This, again, is just based off of how numbers are falling. You'll see, I'm not gonna go through all of these again. I mean, a lot of them are small, but there is some $10,000 ones, some $5,000. This is based on a couple teachers' absences we have right now that are unpaid leaves of absences, and that's why you'll see the sub amount go up. I've projected that this will be based off what we spent last year for the last 2 months of school compared to where we are this year, that this is a pretty accurate number. But again, as you guys know, long-term subs, we budget I don't want to say a conservative amount, but at any given time, for example, we looked at our numbers this year, and in mid-March to the end of the school year, our projection was for 4 subs, the long-term sub, there's going to be a cost of around $50,000 just for 4 subs. So, I mean, you can see how quickly that sub budget can get out of line. And that's why if you look at next year's FY18, we budgeted, I think, a $20,000 increase. So the way it looks this year, subs will probably end up as what we budgeted for FY18. The other line item that I wanted you guys to be aware of that we're making a transfer to is elementary English textbooks and related. When I first got here, there was a PO open for $26,000, almost just $27,000. I left it thinking that it had been encumbered for some specific reason. Come to find out in reviewing with Ruby that this PO actually was not needed. So this PO, this $27,000, is going to play a huge role in helping our budget as we come down to the final line. And other line items, though, the other thing I wanted to mention is all health insurances we've dropped a little bit. The retiree health insurance split bill we have with Plymouth, how it works is anyone that was a Plymouth Carver retiree, they maintain on Plymouth's insurance. Plymouth bills us back for that. Came in $4,000 that we're able to recoup in our actual fiscal year budget. But one thing that we had this year that really stuck out, and we just found out until I got the last coaching order, is coaches for the high school are going to come in at $15,000 over what was actually budgeted. Again, I don't know how the original calculation came into play for coaching staff, but needless to say, next year we have an exact list of the positions that'll be going out, and we know the dollar amount that they'll come in at, given if all of our coaches return for specific positions. The only other thing that I wanted you guys to be aware of is we do have a student who requires transport. It's through a reimbursable transport. It's going to be a cost of, this is crazy, but it's $570 a day. With that being said, that is a huge budget killer. The estimate was it's going to be about $78,000 for the rest of when the student started this year to the end of the school year. Like I said, though, it is reimbursed through the sending district, so we will be able to recoup that money. The problem is we don't file that until April, and we don't get reimbursed until June. So we have to front that money. I'm going to look at every revolving account we have to play that off of and not go into our operating budget. But again, this could happen any given time next year where we're liable for the transport, and that's how your budget just gets thrown way out of line.
With the new reserve fund that we,
Definitely will help, definitely help. And the key to this one is this is a reimbursable student. So essentially, we're just behind on our reimbursement, but at the same time, that initial cost is on us to bear.
hopefully that gets approved tomorrow night.
Yeah. Absolutely.
570 a day?
$570 a day. Yep. And that was the only vendor that we had that would take it. We opened it up to multiple vendors and they could not accommodate the route. So,
So we do need a motion to approve the budget
Yeah, I'm sorry.
transfers that,
I make a motion to approve the proposed budget transfers.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
and ultimately, I think that Brad's done a great job of staying on top of each individual line item and making these transfers. I mean, ultimately, the goal is that at the end of the year, that each line item will be zeroed out. And
yeah, that's definitely, and I want to keep you guys, I'm learning about Carver's budget as we go through, to be honest. So this is something that in generally, I would want to do on a quarterly or every biannual basis rather than every month, but just for me and to keep you guys in the situation of our current budget crisis, monthly and every other month has been, I think, a fair estimate.
I think for right now, it's important to do that, Brad.
Yeah. No.
For a couple different reasons. Yeah.
Definitely. Nope, and like I said, you guys, if you have the report, feel free to go through Gina and ask any questions.
Okay.
But $78,000 is a absurd amount, and I feel terrible for that district, but that was the only vendor that we had that would actually run that route, so it's unfortunate.
moving on to Carver Educational Foundation. As you know, Mike Schultz and I participated in Dream Ride 2 last year in June with Plymouth Superintendent Gary Maestas. Our goal was to raise seed money to begin the growth of a Carver Education Foundation. During this year, we've begun the process of forming the organization. We've received designation as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we recruited a board of teachers, staff, and community members, which include Michelle Nickerson, Paula Foley, Bree Wall, Leslie Ritz, myself, and Mr. Schultz. The missions and the goals of the foundation are as follows. So we have a mission statement. Our mission statement is, the mission of the Carver Education Foundation is to broaden community support for public education and to enhance students' educational experiences by providing private funding for classroom projects and educational programs and activities. Our goals. The foundation shall provide resources for programs and activities that encourage academic excellence, sponsor programs for parents and families, promote community awareness and education in the foundation, support lifelong learning, encourage innovative classroom projects and activities, support programs to enhance students' educational experiences. We have two things that we've planned to kind of kick ourselves off as a group. The first thing is the Carver Education Foundation is going to be sponsoring a dinner from Olive Garden at the middle high school on Wednesday, May 10th at 6 o'clock as a kickoff event for the foundation. The dinner will be free of charge to the public. The goal is to get our name, mission, and goals out to people. So all are welcome to attend up to the first 100, and there'll be more information about tickets being available. And the first 100 people to get tickets can have a dinner for free sponsored by the Olive Garden on Wednesday, May 10th at 6 o'clock. They're just going to have to listen to a brief presentation by myself and Mr. Schultz about the Carver Education Foundation and what its goals and purposes are. Really, it will be brief. It will be 5-10 minutes. Our second event, we're holding our first fundraiser on Saturday, June 10th from 7 to 10 p.m. at Pins in Kingston. The cost is going to be $25 per person. The event will include bowling, ping pong, light refreshments, a cash bar, and raffles. This will be an adult event. And we'll be offering a free T-shirt for the first 100 tickets sold. And there'll be more information to come. So, ultimately, Mr. Schultz and I were actually motivated by, inspired by Gary Maestas and what he had done in Plymouth with his first Dream Ride, and the fact that this educational foundation exists in Plymouth, and it exists in several communities on the South Shore. And we thought it would be important to have an organization that could work to help funding special projects throughout the school. Our goal, we have two goals. Right now, a lot of the people involved are school people, so we want to broaden it out and get some more community support. We'd like to have a couple more community members on the board of our board of directors. And eventually, we're going to be getting more detailed about how people will be able to apply for the foundation for funding for projects. And so more of that information is going to be coming. We're kind of in our infancy. But I wanted to make the community aware that the organization officially existed now, and that we're going to be sponsoring some events this spring to try to get our name out there.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Any
Well
questions, thoughts?
I think it's awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
I agree.
And moving on to, I think, our last item for the evening is the superintendent's evaluation. So, the chair and I spoke about this, and her request was that I take you through kind of the reading of the evaluation, and the standards, and then obviously the committee would weigh in on, obviously I'm not voting in terms of what my ratings are, but I'll give an overview, I'll read through the standards and kind of give an overview of the process. So the superintendent is evaluated on 4 standards: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. Each standard has several indicators. As part of the process, I'm going to go through each indicator for the 4 standards of evaluation. Each member will have to give a rating of the indicator of the standard, each member will have to give a rating on each indicator and the standard overall. The rating choices are unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. You also need to rate me on the 3 goals I established for this year. The ratings for the goals are did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met or exceeded. So, I don't know, what questions do people have, if any? And just in terms of my background for each of the indicators of each standard, I've given you some background information as to how I feel that I've met that standard during this school year. In terms of the form itself, it's actually, the goals are listed on the form first, so we'll start with the goals if that's okay. So I had established 3 goals for this year. So the first goal was a professional practice goal. So I'll read what the goal was. In order to develop skills in strategy development, data analysis, and instructional leadership, I will complete the first year of the new superintendent's induction program, as measured by the development of a transition plan and a strategic improvement plan for the school year by May of 2017. The key actions to achieve this goal were attend the 8-day-long sessions, complete all course assignments, consult with my coach on at least a monthly basis, apply strategies learned to my work, and lead the district in development of a strategic school improvement plan. The only thing I'll say about this is on the goal, it says that by May, my current plan is to present that strategic improvement plan to the committee in June, but my plan is to do that within this year. So the ratings would be, did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met, exceeded. No, it's always a little hard on the goals because the goals are really written for the school year, and you're making an evaluation in April. I think April makes sense for the superintendent's evaluation based on the fact that the reality is in April, there are elections. And so there'll be a new member of the board in May, and does it make sense for the new member of the board to be someone who's evaluating my performance for the past year? So I think April is the time that makes sense, but sometimes it just doesn't align with the goals piece in terms of making an evaluation whether I've completed those goals or not. So that being said, Gina?
Andrew?
Are we just going to go through this
Yeah,
way? And basically it becomes a rating system as far as, let's say, there's 3 mets and 2 exceeded, and how does it work?
Well, the final synopsis, Gene and I will sit down and evaluate,
Okay.
put all the scores together from what you come up with.
Perfect. No problem.
Now would be to really present what you thought it would be and any comments
Ask
or
questions or whatever, right.
questions of what you
Yep.
might have for each one.
Met.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Excuse me for 1 second, Paul, if you might. Anne Marie, are you documenting all of
I
this?
am.
Okay, only because last year we had paper and Barry and I did it for paper.
As going, right?
Yeah, so,
So I'll document each goal and standard for you and then present it for the 2 of you to,
if you could just
Pull
print it so
together?
we could have copies, that'd be
Absolutely.
great. Yeah, because I mean, I have a slight printout, but I don't have.
It's all right. The rubric itself is online.
Okay, thank you.
yes, I'm glad to do that. So Mr. Solaroda said met for standard 1, I mean, for
Goal
goal
one.
1.
Yep.
Thank you.
Paula?
I said met
Matt,
Met,
Met as well.
Goal 2 was, in order to ensure meaningful progress is made on critical district and school goals, I will work with principals and other district leaders through the educator evaluation process. Key actions: by October 7th, hold goal meetings with each administrator. By the end of March 2017, complete formative assessments, conferences with each principal and district level administrator. Regularly conduct school and classroom visits with school administrators. And by June of 2013, 2017, complete summative evaluation reports for principals and district level administrators. So I will say, in terms of the key actions, I will say that I did hold goal-setting meetings with each administrator. I have completed formative evaluation conferences with each administrator. I spend 1 day a week. 1 day a week in my schedule is reserved solely for visiting classrooms. Sometimes I do that with the administrators, sometimes I do not. But I already have, tomorrow is a day in the building for me, and I have 2 scheduled visits with with an administrator from the middle high school and an administrator from the elementary school. And I will have everybody's evaluations done.
Met.
I'm gonna, with this, Scott, I would say exceeds, and I think because I've worked with a lot of superintendents, and for you to consistently get in the classroom and to continue to stay connected with what's going on a daily basis is a lot more difficult than people presume. So I'm going with exceeds there.
I'm also going with exceeds. I call you often and you're in the classroom, so exceeds.
I'll go, well, I'm listening to the two of you. I'll actually change from met to exceeds then.
All right, thank you. My third goal: in order to develop a strategic improvement plan for the district, I will develop broad agreement with key stakeholders about the district's most critical needs, the strategies and goals that will address those needs most effectively, and the measures that will be used to assess progress. Key actions: develop an entry plan to present to the school committee, which was completed in March of 2016. Work with key stakeholders to identify strengths of the system and most critical areas for improvement. By March, propose key strategies to improve student learning in district systems of support. In May, collaborate with the school committee to identify 3 to 5 student learning and district improvement goals. Secure stakeholder feedback about engagement, awareness, and commitment to strategies. And in June, present the strategic improvement plan to the school committee. Interesting enough that one goal said May and one goal said June. I didn't notice that the first time around. But the goal is to do that by June. So this is a process that I have been working through. I actually have a draft of our strategic objectives, which I'm going to be vetting through the administrative team, actually at our administrative leadership team meeting this Thursday. I can present those in draft form to the committee in May, with the goal of working towards having the full improvement plan presented to the school committee at our June meeting. As part of this, I got feedback from faculty. I went to PTO meetings. I got feedback from the administrative team. We actually did some work over the summer through our leadership group with Dorothy Presser in terms of vetting some of these ideas. So I've tried to get information from a wide degree of stakeholders. The one group that I did not hit, which I had planned to hit, which was listed out here, was students. I did not hold formal sessions with students.
I'm met.
Matt,
Met.
Okay. All right, moving on to the standards of the evaluation system. So the first standard is instructional leadership, and that standard has several indicators. So I'll just read the indicator, and as I said, I provide some information to the committee on how I've met each of the indicators. So the first indicator, Standard 1A, curriculum, ensures that instructional staff design effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons with measurable outcomes. And, ultimately, from my perspective, I've given everybody background on each of these standards. So if you want to ask me specific questions, I'll be willing to take them. But I don't know in terms of, obviously, I'll spend as much time on this as you want to. But I don't know from a time standpoint if it makes sense for me to actually give that detailed background about each indicator when that's been provided to the committee in advance.
I would say the hardest part that I had, particularly on 1 and 2, is as a principal, it was easier to when I was reading this, I was constantly thinking about you as a principal, and it would be easy. But as a superintendent, it's a different scope where it involves the whole
Yeah, a lot.
district.
And so I guess I want to give, this is the opportunity, James, I'm going to jump off on that and say, this is an opportunity for me to give really credit to many people, from the principals, from Ruby and Janelle, to Meredith and Jen and Michelle, to Karen Tykerd, that, maybe I should use everybody's full name, Michelle Taylor, Jen Kelly, Rue Maestas, Janelle Hawley, Christine Cabral, Mike Schultz, really the administrative team. A lot of this work, especially on the curriculum pieces, gets carried out through others. So obviously as the superintendent, I'm going to establish systems for this to occur. I'm going to interact with people, but I'm not writing curriculum units. But I'm setting the stage for people to be able to do that. So a lot of this work is done through others, and I want to thank those people who are doing that daily work in the classroom. And obviously, maybe even most importantly, are the teachers, because a lot of this work is, I think one of the examples I showed was a unit of study from a social studies classroom. That was written by a social studies teacher and a social studies department chair, which is really an in-depth unit of study. But as an example, I say this is the level of work that's happening throughout the district in terms of the development of curriculum that I'm overseeing with others. And then obviously the other piece I referenced here was the district improvement plan. As a superintendent, it's been my role to help develop this district improvement plan that we have and to develop our strategic plan that we're going to have in the future. And that strategic plan really sets the agenda for everyone to maybe do the work.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the committee, but I found in 3 and 4 it was really easy, and I think because of those reasons, it was much easier to pick within that category. But I also think that's why on those goals that I chose exceeds in that, because I think you being in the classroom and around those students on a regular basis helps this more than anything, because you get to see exactly what's going on more one-on-one that way.
Andrew?
So 1A, proficient?
Proficient.
Proficient.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
Andy?
Oh, did you vote? I was waiting for you. Sorry, proficient.
Standard 1B, instruction. Ensures the practices in all settings reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work. Engage all students and are personalized to accommodate diverse learning styles, needs, interests, and levels of readiness.
1B, proficient?
On this one, I said exemplary. If you want me to expand upon it, I can, but.
A little bit if you don't mind.
Yep. So, I struggled with this one a little bit too, but what stuck out for me is, sort of going back to something you said, James, about Scott being in the classroom and about Scott really leading by example and modeling the way things should be done. And I appreciate the fact that, on a higher level, I think Scott, as our superintendent, has done everything he can to try to address all those groups, whether it's through, Karen's program recommendation tonight that he's supporting, or through other things. So that's why I said exemplary.
Thank you. I would concur. Exemplary.
Exemplary. Do you want me to read a little comment? I liked it. Scott presents as a genuine, intelligent, collaborative leader with the best interests of students and staffs at the heart of his decision-making process. He easily garners the respect of community, staff, students, and families. There's more. He's, he also has a strong work ethic and conducts himself with a solid moral code.
Thank you.
I'll say proficient.
1C, assessment. Ensures that all principals and administrators facilitate practices that propel personnel to use a variety of formal and informal methods of assessment to measure student learning, growth, and understanding, and make necessary adjustments to their practice when students are not learning.
Proficient.
I said proficient.
I think this is an area that kind of always needs growth. I was proficient.
I was proficient.
Proficient.
1D, evaluation. Ensures effective and timely supervision and evaluation of all staff in alignment with state regulations and contracted provisions.
Proficient.
Proficient.
Exemplary.
Proficient.
Proficient.
Data-informed decision-making. Uses multiple sources of evidence related to student learning, including state, district, and school assessment results and growth data, to inform school and district goals and improve organizational performance, educator effectiveness, and student learning.
Proficient.
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 Now, the last piece is for each standard. It's supposed to give an overall rating of unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. I think that might be best done by Gina and the chair and the co-chair, because you'll have
Right.
all the ratings overall in terms of making the overall rating. But clearly, I don't want to keep people from weighing in on the overall rating as well. But I think, might have to go back and match to each of the individual indicators, if that makes sense.
That's what Bear and I did
Okay.
last year.
All right, so we'll move on to the next standard. Okay. Standard 2, management and operations. Environment. Standard 2A, environment. Develops and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, emotional, and social needs.
I went with exemplary.
Exemplary.
The same. I think with everything, as you were talking about, everything that new is going on, you're modeling it, and I think that's a huge part of it. So exemplary for sure.
Exemplary.
Exemplary.
Thank you. 2B, human resources management and development. Implements a cohesive approach to recruiting, hiring, induction, development, and career growth that promotes high quality and effective practice.
My belief is exemplary.
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 Thank you again. 2C, a scheduling and management information system. Uses systems to ensure optimal use of data and time for teaching, learning, and collaboration. Minimizes disruptions and distractions for school-level staff.
Proficient.
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 Exemplary.
Proficient.
2D, law, ethics, and policies. Understands and complies with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, and ethical guidelines.
Exemplary.
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 2E, fiscal systems. Develops a budget that supports the district's vision, mission, and goals. Allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district and school level goals and available resources.
Proficient.
Exemplary.
I imagine this could be a statement of contention for a lot of people, Scott, but I think that what you guys have worked through and done this year is exemplary in what we've had to go through and do.
Exemplary. Or
Exemplary.
wizardry.
Yeah, I agree. Exemplary.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever list wizardry in a situation where we have to reduce, $1.2 million from the school's budget.
Well, I think just facing that in your first year alone, Scott, is a daunting task, and I think the way it was handled, although not agreeable by all, was done in a very professional and eloquent manner that tried to look at every possible facet to make it the best thing that it could be. And that took a lot of your time and effort to do that. And although granted, you may feel that that's part of the job, you put a lot into care and concern into making sure that you did the least damage that possibly could be from something that wasn't created through your own actions. so.
And to just to add to that too, I know that, if I'm wrong, you can correct me, Scott, but I believe that some of your experience as our principal helped you recognize something in those line items as you were going through and reviewing the budget with your superintendent hat on, and, you know, you could have just said, oh, that's weird, and moved on, but you didn't. You had the integrity and you had the desire to make this right, and you have put in beyond 100% effort and have, to James's point, dealt with a lot of challenges in a very effective way, so that's why I said exemplary as well.
Well, thank you, and again, this is like everything under this evaluation, it really is not. It's really an indication of, a lot of times, the work of others. You know, specifically, Brad's done a great job in terms of supporting me, in terms of the fiscal management. You know, in terms of the decisions we've made, that was really done by the entire administrative team and had a lot of support and input from a lot of people. But in terms of the day-to-day operations of the fiscal management, you know, Brad's been invaluable.
But I think, Scott, again, just to, not to continue with it, but the fact that you took the time to consistently take that input from all those administrators to make the best decisions, because they are on that day-to-day, and there are a lot of superintendents who might just make those decisions on their own and not really involve much input from that. But you consistently reflected input throughout this whole process, and although some people didn't show up till the very end to be aware of what was going on, we worked through this for months, and your efforts reflected in everything that was done.
On top of all that, I mean, coming back to us in the school committee and taking our direction at the same time and mixing everything together to come up with some type of solution.
Thank you. 3, engagement. Actively ensures that all families are welcome members of the classroom and school community and can contribute to the effectiveness of the classroom, school, district, and community. That indicator is actually a little repetitive, but that's good.
I went with exemplary, and in all honesty, I wish there was another one above that. I think this is the number one thing that stands out for me as far as the relationship that you've built with the town as a whole, not just this committee or just the kids in the classroom or just the administrators or just the teachers. You've built it as a whole, and I think that's a huge statement as far as my viewpoint towards you. I really appreciate that, and I think the relationship that you've built through our joint meetings, through your separate meetings with the town administrators or whomever, when you come back to us with information, number one for me. So,
Well, thank you.
I also said exemplary for those reasons.
As I said earlier, 3 and 4 were easier for me because I think these are your strengths. And I think it's clear that you're not just working in this community, you truly care that this community succeeds at what it's doing, and that reflects in what you do, so that's exemplary.
8 AM at the bus stop alone, Scott, exemplary.
I'll say exemplary, and being the last one to say exemplary, I can just say I concur with my colleagues.
Thank you. 3B, sharing responsibility. Continuously collaborates with families and community stakeholders to support student learning and development of home, school, and the community. I'll read that again because I didn't do that well. Continuously collaborates with families and community stakeholders to support student learning and development at home, school, and in the community.
exemplary.
Exemplary.
Carver Education Foundation is a prime example of exemplary.
I agree, exemplary.
Exemplary.
3C, communication. Engages in regular two-way culturally proficient communication with families and community stakeholders about student learning and performance.
Exemplary.
I said proficient?
Scott,
Or,
I-
no, was it, yeah, proficient.
I had a question here. How impacting is this standard truly in this community? Like, how much do you feel this comes into play? I know there are circumstances, but I mean, we're not extremely culturally diverse.
I mean, so from a culturally proficient communication, and then in terms of that specific aspect, I mean, where appropriate, I guess would be the answer. So we're not an extremely diverse community, and the only one I think, if I was going to give a self-evaluation on this, not that anybody asked for that, but as I read this standard, I really did give you a self-evaluation in the background, but as I read this standard, I think we could communicate a little more about student learning and performance. So the end of the indicator is, so I would say that regular two-way communication about any topic is a strength, but I think we could do more in terms of that second part of the standard of student learning and performance.
I would agree with that. I would say proficient.
I'm gonna say exemplary. I'd like to just read this. He communicates well, seeks input in making decisions and strategic plans with stakeholders with the ultimate goal of student success.
Thank you.
I'll say proficient.
And the last one in standard 3, family concerns. It's 3D. Addresses family and community concerns in an equitable, effective, and efficient manner.
I went with proficient. I truthfully didn't have a great background on this one to know much, so I'll certainly follow up with you about it a little bit to learn more.
Yep, that's fine.
And I went with exemplary because, at first I wasn't sure, kind of like Andrew, I thought, well, I don't know. But I know my own personal interaction with you when I've called you with a concern or a question, how you've handled it, how professional you've been, and how you've communicated. And so I based this on that, and so I said exemplary.
I found this easy. Exemplary.
Exemplary.
Proficient.
And then going into the last standard, standard 4, professional culture. 4A, commitment to high standards. Fosters a shared commitment to high standards of service, teaching, and learning with high expectations for achievement for all.
I went with exemplary, but that also comes with the commitment from you that those standards, once met, you continue to raise them. So that's what I expect.
I said
Yeah,
exemplary.
yeah.
These are words that I've heard out of your mouth as long as I've known you, so exemplary.
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 4B, cultural proficiency. Ensures that policies and practices engaged in. I'm failing my reading test this evening. Maybe it's getting a little late for all of us. We'll try again.
Being unsatisfactory.
Reading needs improvement. Ensures that policies and practices enable staff members and students to interact effectively in a culturally diverse environment in which students' background, identities, strengths, and challenges are respected.
Went with proficient. Again, I think this would be another one I want to try to look into a little bit more.
I said exemplary.
Proficient.
Exemplary.
Proficient.
Communication. Demonstrates strong interpersonal written and verbal communication skills.
An easy exemplary.
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 Continuous learning. Develops and nurtures a culture in which staff members are reflective about their practice and use student data, current research, best practices, and theory to continuously adapt practice and achieve improved results. Models these behaviors in his or her own practice.
Exemplary.
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 Shared vision. Successfully and continuously engages all stakeholders in the creation of a shared educational vision in which every student is prepared to succeed in post-secondary education and become a responsible citizen and global contributor.
Proficient.
Proficient.
Exemplary.
Exemplary.
Proficient.
And our last indicator, standard 4, managing conflict. Employs strategies for responding to disagreement and dissent, constructively resolving conflict and building consensus throughout a district or school community.
Proficient.
Exemplary.
I think, Scott, a strength of yours, maybe through your history background, is an ability to look and try and look at all sides of things as you go through them, so I definitely felt this was exemplary.
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 All right, I'd like to thank the committee for their feedback, and more importantly, again, I'd like to just thank all the members of the staff that I have the opportunity to work with. I always say that I'm blessed that I get to work within this community. There's great teachers here, there's great administrators here, there's people who really want to do everything they can to ensure that our students have access to the best education that they can. So thank you to all the people that I get to work with on a daily basis.
Baruch?
And so, let's go into any other reports from school committee members.
Are there any other recommendations from the superintendent, or
There is not. That's it.
I think you had enough chatting, you can
Yeah.
rest for a few minutes. Reports from school committee.
Me. Actually, I might want to go last. Did anyone else have anything?
I just wanted to mention one thing, I'll be brief.
Yeah.
Because I missed our last joint meeting, and I'm not sure where I heard this information or saw this. So many things going on, but that administration gave up their 2%.
So the proposal that was made was that the administration, if we found other funding sources, the administration would be willing to give up 2% to bring back one of either the technology teacher or the grade 5 teacher. We at the joint meeting, we made a request of the Board of Selectmen to see if they could support us in coming up with an additional $130,000. $133,000 along with the teachers, the administrative 2%, would get us those two positions back. That proposal did not gain much traction. An administrative zero alone would be about $22,000. It wouldn't really be able to bring back much. It would have to go it would have to go with something else to try to bring back a position. So we left it as if something else comes up or another opportunity comes up, that the administrators will take the zero.
Well, giant dunes are built with grains of sand, Scott, and I know that sounds silly, but the fact that you're willing to present that and put that forth, I would like to give you my appreciation, because I was not at that meeting. And I think that just supports everything we talked about tonight, that you as a leader are modeling what you feel is the best action to move forward. And I, as a community member, thank you for that very much.
I agree.
All of you, actually.
Yeah.
Because that's a full administrative team that you're referring to, correct?
Correct.
So, that would be it from me.
The only thing, I know I'm not a report from the school committee, but I just like to take a moment. I know we did have a brief recognition of Paula for her years of service on the school committee prior to the meeting. So I guess in a public forum, I'd like to again thank Paula for her 9 years of service to the school committee, which is she's made a decision to not rerun again this year, so she's not up for election. But Paula has really been dedicated to the students of the community, and we specifically, before we referenced that really came onto the committee looking to bring the new school on board, and has been able to stay on the committee to see that happen. So Paula, I'd just like to publicly thank you for your 9 years of service on the Carver School Committee. So you've done a great job.
Thank you, Scott.
Before you start, I also would like to thank you. It was a pleasure to serve underneath you, and it was a pleasure to learn from you. And I hope if I give you a phone call every now and then, you'll give me words of wisdom.
Voicemail? No, just kidding.
All
I'll
right,
always be
Paula,
there.
the floor is yours.
All right. So I came prepared with something I'd just like to read. It's a little long. I hope you'll all bear with me. But I'm also going to post this on Facebook so people can read it. A letter to my fellow Carver residents. As I leave my position as a member of the school committee, I, of course, reflect on the 9 years I've served. Thank you to those of you who voted for me. I ran for this position because of my passion for education. The first time I ran, my oldest son was 7 years old and my youngest was 4. I had been volunteering in my older son's classroom for about 2 years and was serving on the school council when I learned the time had come to pull papers for school committee. I knew that we needed a new elementary school, and I wanted to be a part of seeing that happen. I knew that technology would have more of an impact on changing the face of education, and hoped to do my part to help usher in those changes so our children could remain competitive. I said then, and still maintain, that the best, if not only legacy that I can leave for my children is a solid and well-rounded education. It's a legacy that I'd like to leave for generations to come. That legacy and the future of public school education in Massachusetts is in jeopardy. I wish I could say I've enjoyed my time on school committee. I do enjoy driving by the new Carver Elementary School and seeing it finally being built. I do enjoy knowing many of the children in the school system now have access to iPads, tablets, or computers. I appreciate the learning I've experienced being on the school committee. I found it to be a steep learning curve. The budget process is complicated. The funding formulas are flawed and complicated.
There are unfunded mandates handed down from the federal or state governments that are impacting our schools, taking tremendous amounts of time and money away from classrooms and investments in supplies and technology. These are only a few of the challenges that put public education in jeopardy. Many people recently wrote to the school committee members to express their concern about the budget we'll vote tomorrow at annual town meeting. They implored us to prevent catastrophic cuts to the budget. I know that I have done everything in my power to mobilize our community. With many families working more than one job, some single parents, and perhaps even general disinterest, it has been disheartening to pour my efforts into something that goes beyond just being a member of the school committee. While I'm grateful for the letters, my final act as a school committee member and a mom of 2 boys now attending the middle high school is to issue a call to action. My fellow residents, parents of current and future students, please get involved. Attend school committee meetings. I can tell you this room is virtually empty. Thank you for being here, both of you. We've got our union representative, our video person, and Mr. Shea, correct? Thank you. Where are the parents? I don't see any parents in this room the night before a town meeting. Except for Mr. Shea. We need to have more parents involved, learning, trying to understand what's going on, and speaking up. So please get involved. Not only am I asking you to attend school committee meetings if and when possible, but ask questions of our superintendent. As you could see from his review tonight, he's very accessible, although I hate to invite a flood of calls to you, Scott, but I'm sure you'll manage them well. Or contact the school committee chair or vice chair. Research the issues we're facing and speak to our selectmen. Tell them directly and through your votes at town meeting what matters. The future of our nation depends upon upcoming generations having the talent, skills, and knowledge to be competitive. We need to move the needle. Please join me in taking part. Tomorrow's annual town meeting may be long and isn't the most inviting thing to do on a Tuesday night. But if you don't go, it's like handing your wallet to somebody else. I work too hard for my money to let someone else decide how I want to spend it or how I want to contribute to my children's futures. Thank you again for allowing me to serve. I may no longer be a school committee member, but I will always be a proponent of education and all that it holds for our futures. I look forward to seeing many of you tomorrow night at the annual town meeting at the Carver High School Auditorium at 7 p.m.
Paula. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
I'd just like to mention that there is babysitting tomorrow night at the annual town meeting, and I'd also like to mention that the regular school committee meeting will be May 8th.
And thank you, all of you, for the interactions we've had. We have not always agreed, we have questioned each other, and I hope that spirit continues, because I think it's important to hear each other and understand different views before jumping to conclusions. And it's really been, although I wish I could say I enjoyed school committee, that's just because for the 9 years I've been on, we've been facing dismal circumstances financially and with the buildings, and I was hoping I could hang on long enough to be a part of things where we could say, we're getting money back in the budget, we can add a program, or unfortunately we're not there yet, but I will work outside school committee to help, and I hope you guys continue the collaboration and respect that I've seen here. So
9
thank you
years
all.
is a big time commitment,
Yeah.
Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
That controversy or that lack of agreement is what makes things move forward. So thank you for all of that, too, very much so.
My pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you, Paula.
thank you.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.